Live from iRacing's virtual Daytona International Speedway, we say good evening, sim racing fans, and welcome to RaceSpot's coverage of the 2024 iRacing Daytona 500. We're happy that you're with us on this Friday night split of the great virtual American race. We're alongside Joey Tebbett, and my name is Evan Pasoko, and our producer Dustin Allis is downstairs bringing us to you this evening. And there are more than 1,600 iRacers getting ready to go racing in the iRacing Daytona 500 in this time slot, but we have got the best of the best on deck for you next as we are ready to watch the top split do battle in this open setup run at 500 miles to the World Center of Racing. And it is not the start of the iRacing special events calendar, Joey. We've already gotten things kicked off here at Daytona a few times over, but first time on the oval side here in 2024.
Yeah, we've taken the Daytona road course and we've kind of heated it up with an iron. We've straightened it out a little bit. We've circled it around, and we go to the great American racetrack. 500 miles of super speedway racing here at Daytona. It's going to be tons of fun, but the entire calendar is going to be tons of fun. 4 VCO Grand Slams with the endurance races, and of course, many, many new special events this year. The Martinsville MX 500. I'm absolutely circling that in July. That's going to be so much fun. And of course, the usual suspects we're used to, Evan, with the Bristol 500, the Brickyard 400, and the Coke 600. Also going to be full-length NASCAR races on the iRacing special events calendar. And with all that, I didn't even mention the new Indy 6 Hour. There's so much going on.
There is a ton going on, and you reference this one of 4 full-length NASCAR Cup Series races that makes it on the special events calendar. Of course, these drivers competing here in one of a kind of a larger battle, and that is the 2024 NIS schedule as well. Of course, kicking off here in Daytona, this is going to be running weekly with fixed and open setup series every single week in and week out. but of course, those highlights being here in Daytona, and then the other full-length races at the Brickyard, at Bristol, and at Charlotte for the 600. Of course, tonight, though, being one of those 4 full-length races, it is not the longest on the calendar. The 600 has got us beat by about 100 miles. That'll be happening later on this summer, but it is something to do with this time of year, right? You talk about we've heated up the road course here with the Roar, with the Daytona 24. It's been Daytona week here on the iRacing service. Many of the drivers in the field here tonight competed just this past Tuesday in the season opener of the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series, and now they're going to get a chance to do it here. So this kind of late January into early February time of the year really is, I think, one of my favorite times on the service and in the racing world altogether, and it just feels so good being here at Daytona, and it feels especially good here when you can see sunny skies virtually in Daytona Beach.
It also feels especially good when you've got cars on track. We get our first peek, a little bit of flyby there. That is beautiful stuff, and that means that we're ready to go qualifying. We're ready to go racing at Daytona. We're going to be here for the whole of the night, Evan. I'm ready for whatever it brings us to. It could be a rapid-fire race 3 hours long. It could be a little bit of a start-stop race 5 hours long. I think everybody's happy, though, to be kicking off this season at Daytona with the biggest race of them all.
Yeah, absolutely, and we're happy to be a little bit of a part of that as well, and happy that you're all with us along for the ride as we race into the night. But with that, the attached qualifying session for this split has come to a close, so let's go trackside and take a look at your race spot starting grid, and it is going to be Tyler Gary on pole position, 49.317, best of them all, and Brandon Bakey will join him on the front row. A couple of Florida guys here in the Sunshine State, 1 and 2. Daniel Naney and Dalton Collins will make up row number 2. They'll start in 3rd and 4th position, with Matt DiCanati in 5th position and Matthew Morton in the number 6 spot. Back on row 4, it'll be David L. Brown starting from 7th, ahead of Brad Newman in 8th, and then to round out your top 10, Garrett Maines, the number 1 seed in this race, the highest I rating. He'll start from P9, and Daniel Smallwood rounds out your top 10.
Then Andrew Payne and Patrick Gitter will make up row number 6, but the hits are going to keep on coming. It is a packed field here. James Holzer, not to be confused with Jeopardy champion James Holzhauer, he's going to start alongside another Derek Heitman, and then Dylan Pettis starts alongside one of the international drivers in the field, Octavio Rondoletto, representing Roar Esports and representing Argentina. And also Johan Seminario, name you might be familiar with from iRacing, top-level NASCAR competition. And then from the toppest of the top-level competition, we go to Zach Novak, a very familiar name to all of us, Evan, in the number 2 car. He's going to be a favorite all day long. And speaking of favorites, we got last year's winner, Nicholas Vroman, alongside fan favorite, me favorite, because he's got 2 of my names, Joseph rounds out the top 20.
And that only takes us halfway home. Everybody else from this on back going to be seated based on provisionals and did not take times in qualifying, and includes the Dead Zone Racing Malik Rayentry, represents Spire Motorsports in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series, and my co-commentator for that series, Blake McCandless, is going to be alongside in 22nd. Daniel Buttafuoco will start from 23rd spot alongside with Blaze Crawford. They will make up row number 12. Michael Prefrish in the number 25 spot with Graham Bull and more of that top-level NASCAR talent in P26. It just keeps on coming. Jonathan Delaney will start from 27th with NASCAR rookie Matthew Zawak in 28th. So a couple of rookies back there on row number 14. And through your top 30, going to be the 23 of Liam Sheen and the 24 of Brandon Schmidt.
But even as you get this deep in the field, you've got some big names. Alex Link is the link down here to the bottom 7 cars. Michael Romanides, Coanda Esports driver, one of the few drivers in the field with over 10,000 road I rating. He's got some pretty good oval I rating to make it here in the top split as well for good measure. Dalton Milam and Dallas Pataska will make up row number 17. Then Abraham Vela and John Hall down to 36th. One more driver. Poor old David Robertson will start from the tail end of the field. I don't think he's going to be too worried about that. Sometimes being at the back at Daytona is the best place to be at the start of it.
Yeah, exactly. So look towards the bottom of your starting grid, 37 cars total, only 17 drivers actually opting to take a time in the qualifying session. Can't say I'm too shocked by that. This is a long game. We talk about the tail of the tape for tonight's race. 200 laps, 500 miles, and part of the battle in a race like this is just making it to the end.
It is a race of survival, and add in 3 potential green-white checkers to the end of the race. This is going to be a typical Daytona event in that the drivers who are there at the end, they're going to be the ones to look at for the win. There are going to be crashes. There are going to be big ones today. You're going to have to avoid them. You're going to have to make it through, and you're going to have to survive 500 miles.
Top spot belongs to the number 17 Machida, Tyler Gary, out of the Legacy Esports camp as the pace car heads off and in. We're happy you're with us on RaceSpotTV. Let's go racing in the iRacing Daytona 500. Well, the outside line had the advantage for the first 2 miles or so, but when it comes to the end of lap number 1, inside, and Daniel Naney, the advantage, leads lap number 1 of this 500-mile race. The inside now pulls about a 4.5 car length advantage for the second time down the super stretch.
But notice that all 37 cars, even with 2.5 miles of racing already in the books, all together in the pack. And it's a question of finding your place in the pack. Where do you want to be? Do you want to be in this long line in the bottom? Do you want to be up on the top? I think I just saw the number 4 car of Holzer moving up there to that top line, trying to get more numbers up there and trying to get that momentum going up on the top.
Some drivers already cautioning one another in the open radio channel that all of these drivers share that it is a long race, a long way to go. So clearly some drivers not happy with some of the moves early, and already 3 wide now off it into turn 1 with that 25 Adalton Collins, the old black Chevy, kind of stuck in the middle there. He'll get a little bit of help from behind. Might be a push from the 12 car behind it, Daniel Smallwood, but they will figure it out to get the 2 wide, only for a moment's notice, though, because now in front of those cars, some more 3 wide with the 2 machine headed to the middle of the racetrack. That's Zach Novak. He's pushed by the 16.
Still over 450 miles to go. You do not want to be 3 wide right now. That is just too scary of a situation. It's too dicey. All of these guys in the middle, in that sandwich, the number 16 of Delaney, and all those other drivers, they want to get out of there, but it's so tough to find a hole on the bottom. This bottom line goes all the way to the back of the field, all the way back to 37th. It's like trying to merge into another lane on I-95 in Connecticut. It's impossible because there's a truck down there who's not going to let you in.
And look at the 4 car trying to get to the outside. Contact there, though, as Holzer was pushed aggressively by the 17 to Gary, but they could not get around the 19. He kind of half tried to go to a 4th lane, drove into the back of the car in front of him, made some slight contact with the outside wall. No harm, no foul, and we stay green. But already shades of what we saw Tuesday night with the NASCAR race. 3 wide early, a lot of pushing aggressive on the front row, including a challenge for the lead as Andrew Payne will get the lap led that time by. He'll then sidestep down to the inside, take that safe lane away, and that leaves the 1 car of Garrett Maines as the lead car on the top side.
No pain for Andrew right now, but this is kind of a test of 2 different schools of thoughts in the field. Do you want to go to the lead early? Do you want to get aggressive and lead in this first stint before the first pit stop even comes around? Or do you want to hold back a little bit, save some fuel, keep that engine nice and cool, get some fresh air on your nose, and wait until later on in the running to get aggressive? You're starting to see those 2 different schools merge right now. That's why things look so crazy. There's some drivers who are just trying to survive, and there's some drivers who want to make sure that doesn't happen at the behest of themselves.
And that was the 5 car of Joseph made that quick move under the 37 car of Brad Newman. He's going to bring the 3 machine of Nicholas of Roman with. They will both go down to the inside and back to 2 wide. So the third lane, or that three-wide battle, seems to only be a mechanism at this point. Nobody's really committed to staying in the third lane, but they will go to the middle if it is a means to an end. Get a couple of spots and then either blend up high, blend down low. Nobody really wants to stay there. They very quickly get back to 2x2. Look at the 17 out of line a little bit there. That bright teal 37 topside is Newman, who's going to be the one who gets shuffled out of line. He is going the wrong way on that third lane.
He's fallen back, but look at who's in the lead. The number 5 of Joseph started 20th on the grid, and he has done nothing but move forward. And I do have to have full disclosure all day long, Evan. The guy's name is my name times 2. Of course I'm going to be biased towards him.
That's fair, and to be honest, when you
and I know you're
that,
just jealous because there's no Evan in the field.
I don't know if I've ever called a race with an Evan in it. Ever.
Not one?
Not one.
Well, all you Evans out there in the chat, this is your inspiration now. Once we get to the next special event, but that's going to be the first caution already.
Big trouble. The 22 car slides up in front of the field, and an early yellow 7 laps in to this top split of the iRacing Daytona 500. It all happened in the run down to turn number 3, and who would have thought it was the 3 wide that was the culprit. It all started right around Dylan Pettis. I saw his 22 car sideways, but I think Zach Novak going to be one of the big names in this battle. That was really the first car to lose it. He is the number 2 car in this field, so second highest rated driver based on iRating. The average of your field in this split, 6,865. And I don't think that experience helped him out because this looked like a pretty classic Daytona accident. I think the replay will show. Watch that middle. They're just going to get checked up, and boom, that 2 car gets spit high, comes back down across the racetrack, and when you've got cars spinning like that, it is hard to find an opening.
And Zach Novak was in a bad situation there because he had a car pushing him behind, and he was getting pushed into a car in front. That combination is never comfortable when you're a driver, and he couldn't really do anything there. Just got totally turned around, and everybody was so packed together still. We weren't even 20 miles into this race. When there's 37 cars together on track and somebody spins, not everybody's going to be able to avoid that. That's not even a situation of people not being able to brake. There just isn't space to avoid something like that this early in the race.
I feel bad for both the 20 and the 22. I mean, they just got clipped when Novak came back down the racetrack and across the nose of the 16 of Jonathan Delaney. He just got into the right rear quarter panel of that 20. David L. Brown sent him around, and then more of a straight door shot to the Team Conti number 22 machine, Dylan Pettis, which sent him around as well. And again, they just kind of went spinning in from there. The 11 machine gets some damage. There's going to be some issues for Matthew L. Morton. A lot of cars really just kind of mashed the brakes and did what they could to avoid it. Pretty big hit for the 9 of Blaze Crawford. And pit road is buzzing early in this one. Joseph going to win the race off of pit road. He only spends about 5 seconds in the box. So looks like everybody in for service on pit road. Brandon Schmidt, first car off of pit road, but that's because he missed the pit stall. So he has the opportunity now to decide if he wants to come back in for service, drop to the rear, or simply take the track position. Obviously not what he wanted, but everybody in this opening lap number 7 accident.
Yeah, we were only 8 laps into the race, but it was far enough into the race that everybody really deemed it worth it to take fuel. Probably not tires, but let's ride on board here with the direct middle of that caution. This is Zach Novak just getting turned, and you can see, especially from that view at the rear end, there was absolutely nothing he could do there. He was a passenger, and then you see the whole field coming by, everybody desperately trying to avoid, using some of that grass, going all the way up at the top of the wall, and for many of them, did not quite work out. You still see quite a few drivers. Dalton Collins and Jonathan Delaney, they got the worst of it. They're still on pit lane after 2+ minutes of repairs.
Yeah, tough break for those drivers. Of course, you're not going to have any sort of quick repairs available to you in a race like this. Dalton Collins' accident actually happened, just looking back, trying to get an update on what he's doing field service-wise. The 25 actually blew the engine after the accident when he was getting back up to speed. I think it was a money shift coming back to pit road. That's going to be what takes Dalton Collins out of this race. That is pretty unique. Of course, in these modern-day Cup cars, the way they are in the car, you almost can't do that in real life, but on the sim, you can still race with your H-pattern shifter if you want, sequentials, paddles, whatnot, and It was just a missed shift for Collins. That's going to be the primary reason why he has severe engine damage. You can see even more cars trickling back down to pit road this time for additional service, maybe even wanting to get a little bit of extra fuel. Almost everybody fuel only, right? 4 seconds, 5 seconds in the box, nice and quick, and they blend back out because the lights are out on top of the pace car.
It's tough to play strategy right now because there is so far to go in the race, but you can think about it a little bit. Fuel window is expected to be around 40 to 45 laps, depending on how much you lead, depending on how much you're able to save. So that means that dividing 200 laps up in green flag running is pretty easy to do, but when you start to add in the cautions, when you start to add in the luck of the draw and potentially getting trapped if you make a pit stop too late or too early, there's all sorts of things you can do. So I think when you're this early on in the running, most everybody who is at the top half of the field is going to be thinking about doing what their opponents are doing so they can stay in their position. But if you're already in the back of the field, you've got nothing to lose by coming down to take a little bit of extra fuel, maybe get a little bit of extra damage repaired, because there's still 190 laps left to go where you can move your way forward.
And we saw so many drivers not take a time in qualifying. That would suggest that 10 laps into a 200-lap race, you're not too worried about track position, but some drivers have already been on the move to this point. The aforementioned Joseph is our second biggest mover of the night. He's up 19 from where he started. That seconds only to John Hall, who started this race way back in 36th position and will restart in 13th. So still some ways to go, but interesting to see how some of these drivers will approach this race. Do you want to get up front? Do you want to battle? Some may say that the safest place to be is first because, well, you're ahead of all the other possible cars that can wreck, but the racing for that number one position tends to be the most dicey. Pace car going to be off this time, 10 laps down in this 200-lap race. Joseph and James Holzer on the front row. Green flag back in the air.
It's going to look pretty similar to the initial start here. Joseph moving up to the top. He sees where the momentum was coming from, says, I'm ditching the bottom, but you're going to see him move back down there, I think, in a couple of moments. When they start to build up the momentum on the back straight, they're going to swallow up that smaller group on the bottom, and you're going to want to be on the bottom early.
Just like the initial start of the race, the outside has the early advantage, but it was in 3 and 4 on lap 1, where the inside surged ahead. But we see a similar thing with Daniel Naney on the bottom, pushed by the 17 of Tyler Gary, and here they come in the center of 3 and 4. They just have a huge speed difference. It's about 195 in the center of the quarter for the cars on the bottom, and for Naney on the bottom, 3 miles an hour faster. He jumps topside now to get with the 5. But he does use the inside to get to the lead. So second time in a row, the bottom has been faster on the opening lap.
And I'm surprised that they didn't move down to the bottom there, but look at this twosome now with Naney and Joseph just pushing the heck out of each other. That's quite the tandem. They've got a huge margin over Tyler Gary, who's the lead car on the bottom now. There's 5 cars before you even get down to the bottom. Holzer and Vroman as well. They've got a big tandem going. It's going to be interesting to see where they take this momentum. Do they duck down to the bottom or do they slot in line? Vroman and Holzer are going to take their momentum and stay exactly where they are for the moment.
The advantage topside, about 4 car lengths over the cars down low, but not a lot of space through any of this field as everybody seems to be pretty aggressive still early. Saw a quick peek at some 3 wide. They clearly thought better of it for the moment. And we go back down to 2 by 2 with that 17 car of Gary leading the way on the bottom. The 3, the 4, they kind of duck down. 3rd and 4th in line up top. Kind of go to that middle lane, maybe try to get a little bit of side draft on the cars on the inside, but they're not trying to leave their lane, at least for the moment. They get right back up in line, and that top side slam drafting all the way down the super stretch and off the 3.
Yeah, nobody's feeling any fear right now. Even with that first caution coming very early, you're still going to see similar amounts of aggression here. And you see the number 6 of Malik Ray moving up to the top. He is going for the big moves. I think he's got Brad Newman behind him, and they're going to look for some momentum. They're going to get stalled out, though, because Holzer and Joseph and Naney, rather, they say, I see your big momentum. I will block you off and make sure you can't go any further forward.
And you see that 3 kind of stalls out there, nothing cooking between him and the 1 car. And when the opening is back on the outside, they step right back up and get in line. And that's a good heads-on shot down the backstretch. You can see these cars thinking. A couple of cars go high, some go low. Most simply just step out of line. This time to the middle of the racetrack again. Going to go the 13 machine of Derek Heatman. He goes to the middle, pushed by, I think that's the 18 of Patrick Gitter behind him. They're going to try to make the 3rd lane work. Again, it's just so tricky with only 2 race cars to be able to make an entire lane work like that. You can probably hold your own, but it really is more beneficial if you've got a big head of steam. You use the middle to then find your next spot in line. You just can't sustain it, and the 18 car bails. He goes topside. That leaves only the 13 of Heitman there, although now that 37 machine of Brad Newman found without a partner. He's kind of forced to drop to the middle, and we've got 3 cars right down the chute.
And eagle-eyed viewers will notice that those 3 cars in the lead of the 3 lines, the middle one is the Camaro. That one looks the same as it normally does, but new design on the front end of that Mustang, new design on the front end of that Toyota Camry as well to get things in the actual update from 2024. They look like they do in the real world now, and I'm actually a big fan, especially in the all-white of that Camry. I'm a fan of that sleek nose. It looks pretty good.
Yeah, of course, the Chevys being the only body that hasn't seen an art update for 24. Of course, I think Chevrolet going to be changing to a different body, though, for the 25 NASCAR calendar, so we can look forward to seeing what they bring. And, of course, iRacing will be on top of updating that. But the new Camaros and the Dark Horse Mustangs sure are looking sharp. There's that 7 of McCandless going to go top to bottom. He wants an opportunity to lead a lap tonight as all of a sudden 6 of your top 7 cars even better are Chevrolets. So Chevys didn't have a good showing early, but those Camaros still kicking strong. Now it's the 4 of James Holzer again in the middle on his own. The 18 might be a lifeline. There's still some cars in the middle, but he's going to drop out of the top 5 real quick.
I think Blake McCandless is getting a little bit greedy here, Evan, as if he doesn't get enough screen time on the iRacing broadcast channels. He needs more right now. We got to get you out in the field next year to even this out.
Nobody wants that, I promise you.
We all want that. We want an Evan Pasoko provisional for 2025.
We would have to change the broadcast protocols to do the bottom split.
You never know. You never know what could happen.
I don't know. What split you think? I think my iRating's at like 3,000. That put me, like, what, 2nd for the bottom, 3rd for the bottom?
You'd be an A split. You'd be an A split. At least one of them.
Yeah, they have to let me in one of them. That's the benefit of having the A license. Exactly. And speaking of, 3rd from the bottom, right now 3rd from the bottom is those cars trying to make a 3rd topside work, but again, it's just the middle is so inconsistent. There's 2 cars there, then they're gone. Then there's 3, then there's none. And again, it really is only benefiting drivers as a means to an end right now. You can go to the middle to kind of transition to the top or to the bottom, but no one's staying down there. And it is a risky move. We've seen a couple of drivers lose 10 spots in the blink of an eye if he gets stuck there, and he did it on accident. Look at that 7 of McCandless. Thought about going high, saw that the gap was closed up top, and quickly cut back down to get in front of Seminario on the bottom, because if that number 35 got under the 7, Blake would have been going straight down that Earnhardt sucker hole in the middle. Not something that he wants. Very aggressive, I would say, for the opening 20 laps of such a long race. You'll notice not everybody, though, is in this lead pack. 34 cars strong. It's almost all of us. Michael Romanidis dropped out of the lead pack. He's 35th. He has lost touch with the draft. And then, of course, Delaney and Collins multiple laps down based on their issues earlier in the race. So Delaney actually, I think, about to get lapped. I think he's that damaged Coca-Cola Chevy just ahead of the field. So this is going to be an interesting moment. He's going to hold the bottom. The inside lane's going to have to push up to the middle. There is enough space, but there's 3 wide coming up now. That's not going to work, and the 36 car has got to get on the binders now, tiptoe around. So when those leaders were 2 wide, they could go 3 wide around the traffic, but they were not going to go 4 wide. That was almost ugly.
Yeah, there's a axiom at Daytona. There is one way you can go 4 wide, and that's by having no space between the cars and having four doors just totally glued together across the track. You can go 4 wide, and it just ends very, very badly almost instantly. So that's why you saw Brad Newman there basically just holding the throttle down and hoping that his competitors would back off and let him actually get through, which turned out to be a pretty savvy move. He made up a couple spots, got past the lap traffic, and didn't force it 4 wide in the lap traffic either, so it all worked out.
First time tonight talking a ton about Matthew Zawak. Coming up the middle was the lead car there, but Tyler Gary going to come down, shut that door, and got a couple of Coke Series level talents doing the battle in the middle with Michael P. Frisch following them through. He can't stay hooked up though. He goes topside, big slice back down to the bottom for the 37. Brad Newman. Newman's been super busy, and it's hard to miss that 37 car. He's got that kind of teal or aqua nose on his Chevy in the middle, stands out like a sore thumb, but not a bad thing. Easy to find him on the racetrack. He's almost 3 wide more than anybody else tonight. That push battle between Zawak and Gary dropped down low. That allows them to defend for the moment. And now that the top side gets a little bit disconnected, look at the 21 car pushing the 17 all the way through the corner, going to give him a huge head of steam off of 4.
Yeah, the momentum of the lines kind of depends on who's down there. If you can get a really good pusher and a really good pushy as well down there on the bottom to lead the line, you can build up momentum down there, and you could do some pretty good things. And that's exactly what we're seeing with Tyler Gary and Zawak behind him. They're doing such a good job that I think some of the guys on the top are starting to have doubts. You saw Nanny moving down to get a little bit of clean air on the nose. He's not able to push as well as he once was because he's kind of used up all of his power, and he's got some opponents on the bottom now who are going to be looking to move forward. Didn't go quite their way on the back stretch, but they're going to be there for a while.
And so are we. Long way to go in this race. 178 laps to go this time by. Already 2 drivers have lost the lead lap, and now can report Dalton Collins has gone to the garage. We have the first DNF of this 500. Looking off of the back, Nicholas Vroman. You got a great look at the draft up on the outside of the racetrack, and he's got the best seat in the house. He's familiar to being up front here in Daytona, finding success. He's led 4 laps of the opening 22 that have been completed thus far. But look at the 19 and 80 on the bumper. Pretty steady down the backstretch. But then when they get into the corner, they're going to breathe a little bit. Well, the cars on the bottom have been more aggressive right there. He disconnects on the entry, and then he's going to want to get right back to the bumper the second they get off of turn number 4. Now, you can see the lead cars on the bottom. They're disconnected now. They have not always been playing that game, but then the key to the draft is who can get reconnected soonest. Well, Naney pushed by Joseph behind, but just now they're getting to the bumper of Roman. That was not as quick as they wanted, and those inside cars got reconnected faster. They gained some ground. That is the constant song and dance that happens every single trip around this 2.5-mile super speedway.
And there's a science to pushing. It's not just slam into the car in front of you and hope that it works out. You do have to get the angle right. You can't push too far to the left or right as if you're going to turn somebody. You can't push necessarily directly straight forward, because that's just not possible. You need to find the right angle, whether that's slightly left of center, slightly right of center, just somewhere to keep that momentum up and not turn the car in front of you, but make sure you're maximizing that momentum and not slowing them down by giving them too aggressive of a push.
Still surprised that everybody wants to be this tight together. I mentioned the lead pack, some 32 cars strong. They are separated only by 1.5 seconds from the very front to the very back of this pack. Quick peek to the middle for Garrett Maines. Doesn't mean much, and that was a quick teaser as there's more lap traffic to come ahead of these race leaders. For Romanides, who I mentioned had lost the draft with the leaders, they're going to have to pass him shortly. Things got a little bit dicey last time we caught some lap traffic. If the leaders can stay 2 by 2, it's going to make things a little bit easier. Right now, they are still 2 by 2. We'll see. They're likely to catch that car sometime this lap.
Oh, that was dicey right there. That was one of the Camrys trying to move up. I think that was actually Tyler Gary trying to almost make a third line work, and that got shut off very, very quickly. That could have been a little bit worse if he didn't have the opportunity to back out of that, but things are going to get dicey up here as well, as there's another lap car coming up. I think that's Michael Romanides already going 1 lap down, but he's going to be very courteous. He's going to go down to the double yellow line and not cause any more trouble than he really needs to.
So as expected, and I mentioned they did get him this lap, and the benefit there is, again, there was no 3 wide amongst the leaders. So they're going to go high, try to avoid him. Now, eventually, the 27 is going to kind of get gobbled up by this lead pack, right? He's kind of in the way a little bit on the bottom. So he's slowly going to start to reap the benefits of the draft, and oh, they almost wrecked back there trying to clear him, but now he's kind of been absorbed by this lead pack, and now he knows that he's not going to go any more laps down, but still tough for Romanides, not where he wanted to be early in this one, but he did what he had to do. He was courteous enough, held the bottom lane, and kind of got absorbed into the lead pack. The key there is obviously not getting too much out of the way so that everybody just passes you and leaves you behind. A lot of drafting and a lot of separation up front, though. Huge shot from the 17 to the 21 car as Nick Vroman going to go back to the race lead, courtesy of the push from Daniel Naney. Inside of the racetrack, Michael Frisch leads. The 28 of Milam goes up to the outside of the racetrack. All of them racing like it's the final 10 laps of this race.
Yeah, that scares me quite a bit, and you know who's loving this directly in front of him? Michael Romanides, because he is the only driver one lap down. If we get a caution and he's not involved in it, he will get the lucky dog, he will get waved back to the lead lap, and that's exactly what he wants to see with all of this craziness up front. They are back 2x2 though, so they were able to resolve it, but when you start to see that level of motion, Evan, when you start to see that level of slicing and dicing, the drivers don't really tend to use that. They don't learn from their scary moments. They are fearless, and they're going to keep fighting like that until it does eventually end in a caution.
And often it may be fearless to a fault, as we've seen over the years here in some of the more wild races at Daytona. This one always seems to be one of the best on the service. It is one of the most accessible races in terms of if you're in it, you've got a chance to win it, but that is not to discredit the talent that it takes to be a super speedway expert, if you will, because some people have just got this kind of a racetrack figured out better than others. Only two cars in the middle. It's the 5 machine of Joseph and the 1 of Garrett Maines. You go on to board with Maines there, you can see the inside, the outside have got more cars than they do, so they're just kind of holding their own. Now the 2 car jumps up and gets in front of them. And Zach Novak, now the 2 and the 5 get a push. They'll leave Maines behind, and he may be forced to kind of abandon to the top side. At no point have we really gotten 2 rows, bumper to bumper, and just locked it in for 10 laps. Everybody's trying something. And of course, with 171 laps to go, you can't win the race right now. Now, it is later in the week, so these drivers have maybe already competed in some of the iRacing Daytona 500s on the service so far this week. Of course, plenty of official racing going on, league racing, and you name it, but I suppose some of it could still be that learning process, but the benefit of a top split race like this is, to an extent, a lot of these drivers know each other, right? That's not necessarily a guarantee when you do official racing on the service, but when you do top split stuff like this, especially iRacing special events, a lot of these drivers know each other. So they can be a little bit more aggressive than you would see in maybe other sessions because, well, they know how each other races, and sometimes that almost lures them into a false sense of security, I would argue, but it allows them to put on the kind of racing we've been seeing so far.
Yeah, it does, but you can trust your competitors on one hand, but you also know which of your competitors you can't trust. So if you're looking for a buddy in those final laps, or even right now, if you're just trying to move your way forward through the field, you're going to know who you work well with. You're going to know who's maybe a little bit scary and might ditch you at the first opportunity, who might get you a little bit out of shape. Knowing your competitors is both a blessing and a curse, because you can find your friends, you can work with them, but you also know when there's somebody in the field who you don't necessarily work well with that you're going to have to deal with them for the entirety of the 500 miles.
It's a long way to go. You do not want to be making enemies early in this one either, or it is going to be a difficult night. As you see the 6 car, the 17 machine, they go to the middle of the racetrack now, and for the first time tonight, the inside has almost as many cars in line as the top of the bottom. Curious if this middle lane will last much. Typically, the second they get clear, they bail. So the 17 and the 6, they're clear to the inside. What do? They merge to the bottom. 37 follows. The 5 car, really the only one to not do it. The 2 car of Novak jumps back down to join. But again, nobody is a ride or die of the middle lane. They're only using the middle to get further up on the inside or the outside. And right there, Novak ran out of drafted partners. The 5 car left him. Goodbye. He drops like a rock immediately outside of the top 15.
Yeah, to the back of the top train there. I'm liking all these sponsors we're seeing. We do see a few popping out of the pack. You've got some blank black cars, but you've got cars with the traditional Brad Newman coin that doesn't actually exist, but we always see that on that car. You've got your setup shops of all sorts. Those are the real sponsors. But you've also got, on the side of Milam's number 28, there's a very large control, and I don't know what the rest of that is. I've been trying to look close, but my eyes can't really focus on those tiny words underneath it. Is he sponsored by the control key, or is this something that I need to read more deeply into?
Yeah, I don't know. As long as he doesn't, control F4 or something out of the session,
Yeah,
I think
don't do that.
He'll be okay.
Can we get a zoom here? Can we get the power of that? Oh, he's going to the middle. There's our zoom. There's our zoom right there, down to the bottom. That makes things way easier, actually. But I think I might have to go to the optometrist, Evan, because I still can't read what it says.
I think I've spotted it using my binoculars from here in the tower. This is going to be your best look. So controls and meal replacement. There you go.
Okay, there we go. So it's like one of those OD like milkshake things.
Yeah,
Protein
very like
shakes.
modern day branding. Kind of make the name a hyphenated. Just modern, minimalist.
Interesting.
I can't
Very
keep up,
interesting. Well, if we get to talk to him after the race, we'll have to ask him how that relationship came about, and can we be totally unbiased and maybe get a free sample? Maybe.
And also, they did not pay for the bumper. So they paid
did
for
not.
the hood. The hood's the big selling point, but they didn't pay for the bumper. So
No, they do not have control of the bumper.
no. So maybe room for more there. And of course, you mentioned
Evan Pasoko on the rear bumper?
not in the budget. Not in the budget.
Darn.
Maybe for the drivers that'll be in the splits that I race in, maybe that's in the budget.
When you finally make it on Wheel of Fortune and win big, then you'll have the money to do it.
There you go. It's not going to happen at Jeopardy, so Wheel of Fortune might be.
Now that'll be
more
for
my
me.
speed.
I'll
You're
get Jeopardy.
Big Jeopardy guy.
I love Jeopardy. Big Jeopardy.
Okay.
So we'll get you on Wheel of Fortune. We'll get me on Jeopardy. We'll get producer Dustin Alice on the Family Feud, and then we'll be in business. We can sponsor anybody we want.
I'm on board with this.
All other game shows are available. Those are not the only three, just to give full disclosure. If anybody out there at home wants to start our weird game show motorsports sponsorship syndicate that may or may not be legal, I'm taking applications.
I always love when you see, as we go through wide here, a little bit sketchy. The lapped car going to yield to the third lane, and I think it's standing still up on the top side of the racetrack. That's the number 26 car dropping it back. The leaders are going to be okay. My favorite thing is when, motorsports-related trivia from a game show kind of makes its way to Twitter, no context, and it's kind of like the one column of answers that you would get motorsports for 400, and they're struggling, or whatever obscure trivia is. But for you, it's a walk in the park. That's what makes my day.
Yeah, if we were going by Jeopardy contestants right now, we would be watching the Indianapolis 500 right now.
Oh yeah, 100%.
That's usually what happens.
Yeah, race cars, circles, Indy 500.
Yes. Or sometimes they break out the Dakar Rally for some reason. Like, that's something that's gotten into the trivia canon. They'll be asking about the Daytona 500, and it's like, what is Paris to Dakar? Like,
I would think it would be everything would be Formula One now with Drive to Survive.
Maybe,
I feel like that would be the rubber stamp answer.
There is at least one viewer right now, I can guarantee, who thinks this is an F1 race, and I welcome that.
Yeah, happy to have you, nonetheless. A couple of extra pieces of sheet metal. In fact, I guess all the sheet metal's more because there isn't any on those cars. But happy you're with us nonetheless, doing 500 miles around this iRacing virtual Daytona International Speedway. And we are closing in on the 1/5 marker in this race as we get close to lap number 40. There's been an accident early in this one, tore up a couple of race cars, but it has not been a calm start for what you would expect out of what is almost an endurance race in oval terms. Drivers have been aggressive. They've been going through wide, pushing in the corners, and you can see the 17 car doing everything he can to work both lanes. Was on the bottom, saw the top side coming with a run, goes up, shuts the door, and now he'll ride with the top side until the bottom gets a run. You can see those cars, 7-8 rows back, trying to get a third lane going. There's 3 of them there. It just takes somebody from the top 5 or so to go down, and right on cue, the 5 and the 1 think about it. That's the blue and the white car, 4th and 5th in line or so topside, but they go right back in line.
And it is absolutely an endurance race. You wouldn't necessarily think of it as one because this is one of the few places on the calendar where when you're in single car running, it is just pen the throttle to the floor and drive. But when you're in a pack like this, it might not be physical to the extent that Martinsville is, where you're throwing the car around, or Darlington, where you are legitimately throwing the wheel around, but you're still sweating in a situation like this. You are stressed, you are locked in, and you're actually using as much muscle power to keep yourself pointed straight, to not be going all over the place. So it is physical in its own right, and it absolutely does get physically taxing. It might be a little bit too early for that to be really taking effect, but 160 laps from now, 400 miles from now, people are definitely going to be feeling the effects of racing at 200 miles per hour for 4 hours straight.
Look at the outside line, 6-car length advantage. Once that 17 machine went up to take the draft away from that, the 5's the instigator. I know he's your boy. By proxy is, here we go with some pit service. Dylan Pettis seems a little bit shy, only having been out there for 32 laps since they last pitted under the yellow, but he's not the only one. And one car missed pit road and is often ruining the yard work. I think that was James Holzer, who just completely overshot the entry and almost cleaned out a couple of cars. He will not get a penalty because he avoids the pit road commitment code, but I think the bigger penalty is going to be all the time that he just gave away.
Yep, he's going to be hoping for an instant caution, but this is a little bit earlier than I was expecting for a pit stop, but it does make sense, because this is basically where everybody would be expected to pit if we went green all the way here. Let's see what happened to James Holzer, though. On the brakes, coming in. He realizes he's locking up. He's not going to make it. He actually, I think, would have made it, but I think he might have made contact with another car on pit entry there. I think that turned him a little bit to the right and made him not make it, because it looked like he would have been able to keep it committed, but he got turned a little bit extra right, and that put him over to the right side of the cone.
So Holzer will come down pit road this time on his own. I mentioned that Pettis wasn't the only car to pit from that group. He was joined by Gitter, Bakey, Seminario, Payne, Robertson, and Schmidt. So just a little bit more than a half a dozen cars are in. And here's the look. You're looking for the old black Chevy. Just way too hot. You can see it kind of wiggling, and then when the smoke comes out, it's locked up. But very fortunate for those other cars that they split him both in front and behind, because that's a surefire way to get cleaned out. Is a car that's locked up like that means he's got no steering control.
Yeah, did not actually get clipped by another car as it looked from the back angle, but he was unlucky there, that when he did lock it up, the car did go askew like that, 45 degrees in the wrong direction. If he managed to get it locked up in the other direction and kept it pointed straight towards the cone, I think he would have actually gotten it slowed down, but he was at full lockdown mode there. He was not in control of the vehicle. He was just trying to survive, and he's absolutely hoping for a caution now, which we almost just got in the backstretch.
I feel like we were saying that every lap, that we almost got one. Every time somebody makes a move to that middle lane, it's dangerous, because again, I get worried when lanes are not established. If that middle lane was established, that's fine, because they're always there. The problem is, because it's kind of the open lane, all it takes is for one car to make a move to the middle from the top lane at the same time a car does the same from the bottom, and that's it. That's all it takes, and it just gets me nervous when you get the staggering or the kind of discombobulation of those lines. And what we're seeing now is the majority of these cars who have stayed out are now going to start to catch that second pack that you're seeing in the bottom right. Those are the cars who have already come down pit road and pitted in this race. They only have about 8 of them lined up in a row. In theory, they will not be as fast as this large pack. So if this large pack continues to draft up to them, it's going to make things interesting. We'll keep an eye on those lap times to see if that's going to happen.
And there's 2 different strategies going on here. Those drivers that came down in the first group, they came down when they would have normally come down in green flag conditions after about 40, 41 laps. These drivers out right now, they made their stops under the last caution as well, but they're going to extend this fuel stint as long as they possibly can. They're only on lap 35 of that fuel stint right now, so they've got 5 laps at the very least, 10 laps potentially at the very most, so they can keep going here, keep building up that momentum, and if they can catch the draft of this train, that'll be a huge advantage once they come down pit road in a couple laps' time, and that may be the way to go. The strength is always in numbers, and the bigger numbers were the drivers who elected to stay out for the longest stint possible here.
And you always wonder, it's so hard to think long-term in a race like this, because all it takes is, again, one bad move, and you're back under the yellow, and that can happen at any moment. But you do have to your point, take that mindset of, we need to figure out pit strategy if we're racing to the end of this 200-lap race. And you mentioned those drivers kind of pitting when they typically would have without that yellow included. It makes the strategy somewhat easier, right? You pitted about lap 40, you pitted 80, 120, 160, 4 stops, you're the distance. The question is for these cars who, again, everybody almost, in fact, everybody did pit in the end under that first yellow flag of the race. All of these cars have gotten a little bit more fuel, right? 8 or so laps fuel more than what they had at the start. I don't know if pushing to lap 50, for example, instead of 40, I don't know if that eliminates a pit stop, right? Somewhere down the line, it will mean that you do not have to take full fuel and you can be a little bit quicker in the box, and I think that is certainly a benefit. I don't know if I would hinge an entire strategy on it, but I think that's the upside as well that some of those drivers are looking for. But again, to your point, the biggest upside is you're still in the largest pack, which means you're going to be in the fastest group.
Yeah, and the trade-off there is that shorter pit stop this leading group right now is going to get at the end of the race. They're probably going to have to come in with about 30 laps to go. That was the same shorter pit stop that the drivers who just pitted already took. But this is where things start to get scary. The two packs are joining together, and there's an extra lap car in there for good measure. This is exactly what that lead pack wanted. They want the draft of those drivers who already pitted. They want the extra speed, and this is working out beautifully, I think, for basically P1 through all the way down to the end of the top 20. And their single file, that's fantastic for them. That's so well behaved.
Yeah, the lap led for Nicholas Vroman, a 45.620 last time by. Tail car of that pack of lapped cars, Brandon Schmidt, 45.765. So the leader's running at about a tenth of a second and change faster. So they are continuously catching, and as you mentioned, the more they get the draft, the more they're going to gain lap by lap. We'll tell you what, it'll make timing and scoring a huge headache if we just absorb this massive pack of lap down cars at the lead of this lead pack, but that's what we put the virtual transponders on them for, so we'll kind of make a mess of it when it's all said and done. But again, these cars up front do need to come down pit road shortly. They all pitted now 40 laps ago, so they do not have much longer before they'll be forced to come down pit road. It may happen almost in line with when they catch that pack in front of them.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see Vroman and Daniel Naney absolutely coming down first because they've been out front this entire time. Naney's been pushing, Vroman's been leading. They're going to be the first drivers to pit, but will it be instantly? Will Joseph follow them in, or can they extend this that little bit further and maybe just go one lap longer before they catch those leaders? It's going to be a question right now. Do we see them pull hard left across the double yellow line? No, they're going to be able to go at least one lap longer.
Benefit of drivers using that open radio channel as well, as it gives us an opportunity to listen in and eavesdrop on some of the strategy. Of course, if you got a teammate in the race, you guys can use a Discord or whatnot, but so many drivers are almost to a fault comfortable using the open radio channel, and I've always enjoyed that because it allows us to get an insight on what the discussions that they're having are. But certainly this lead pack, you mentioned them all behaving single file. It's the first time we've really seen them behave to any effect all night, and it's kind of as this group effort to draft off of those slower lapped cars and catch up, but also pit stops coming up, you can't be 2-3 wide, or the cars up on the outside aren't going to be able to get a crack at a pit road. Race leaders drive on by again, still no takers from the lead pack, as this is more what I was expecting in the opening 50 laps of this race, and we are 1/4 distance through this 500-mile race, 50 laps down, 150 laps to go, still waiting on the first green flag pit cycle for most of the field.
This separation isn't really good, though, for this lead pack. It goes from Vroman to Vela, and then look back to Newman. That's 1.8 seconds, now about 2 seconds. That's out of draft range. You can't make that up unless you get single file again, and this is very much not single file. They're almost 3 wide, 5 rows deep. The lead car of this group is actually a lapped car ahead of Brad Newman, and that is not helping this pack out at all. They're now 2 seconds behind P6, and they're coming down pit lane this time.
Oh, and they're going to be 4 wide. A lot of contact there. Vroman going to get bounced around quite a bit. I don't think anyone's going to get hit with a penalty. Saw a couple of cars miss their stalls. Maybe had to put it in reverse. The 5 car misses his box short. Joseph has the gas back up. And because now, unlike the first trip down pit road, these cars have been out there for a full run, we are looking at tires and fuel. Vroman, not too bad in the box, not going to be the quickest stop of them all. And now the challenge is when they exit pit road. 6 cars off, he's full throttle. All these cars can't accelerate till they get after that pit road exit commitment cone, that green cone. So often we will see everybody, Joey, enter pit road as a big pack, but it'll fracture as they leave pit road. The pit road exit, arguably more important than the entrance, because you need to leave with enough cars around you that you will be absorbed into a pack. You can't get lost.
And it's very difficult because there is no banking down there. It is dead flat, and on cold tires, if you're a little bit distracted, things can go a little bit wrong. But everything has worked out here. The number 6 leading this train, Malik Ray, in that number 6. It's a little bit of separation, though. You see these 6, led by the 6, they're about 16 car lengths ahead of that next group, which is not going to be that strong for them. Strength is in lots of numbers, not just in a 6-car pack like this. I don't know if they're going to be as strong as the, I think, 8 to 10 cars in the first pit stop group.
And we're just waiting on the last 5 cars to come down pit road, and they are with Buttafuoco, Zwack, Frisch, and Milam down pit road. That leaves, I was going to say did leave Blake McCandless as the only car who is yet to come down pit road. We are still waiting on the 7. He is now drafted with some lapped traffic as the race leader. McCandless working with Derek Heitman right there. He's the second of those all-black Chevrolets. Blake is the only car who is yet to come down pit road under green flag conditions. Everybody who came down this time pitted from in front of him. My first thought was, oh, maybe he was the leader of that pack, Joey, maybe got caught out, but they pitted from in front of him. So I don't know what the play is for McCandless unless he's trying to go way long, but he'll be in this time. So McCandless pits from the race lead. That will complete the pit cycle, and that'll hand things over to the net race leader. Was the 8 car there, Daniel Buttafuoco, lead car on the apron, but he's going to get overtaken by those cars who are lined up topside, and Graham Bolin pushing Nicholas Vroman. This group of race cars will go back to the top of the leaderboard once they come around. Now it'll be interesting to see where McCandless ends up, right? He pitted on his own. There are very few things worse than a solo pit stop at Daytona. Curious how McCandless fits back into the picture. He's already out of his box. He's still your leader for the moment. Roman will not be the leader this time by. It's still McCandless, but he's going to be slow on the apron. There he is, and he has not got a chance at beating these cars up to speed.
He does not, unless he pulls a Kevin LePage. You never know what could happen.
True.
But I don't think he's going to do that. He might not show up on the iRacing broadcast channels ever again if that happens. He is going to be down there on the apron. He might actually get caught to the end of this train, because you see on the top of your screen, you've got the lead 6. On the bottom of your screen and in the background now, you've got literally the entire rest of the field, and they need to start getting organized again now. They were so well behaved before the pit stop cycle came around. They can't afford to be too wide right now. They need almost 30 of these cars to be one by one by one by one if they want any chance of making up that 2-second gap up to Malik Ray.
McCandless going to end up all the way at the tail end of this big pack, and all those concerns about getting left in the draft through the green flag pit cycle seem to be qualmed for most of these cars. We've got ourselves a pretty big pack all the way back to McCandless. I would say it's about the top 28 cars or so are still part of this lead draft. Now, that's not to say that everybody got away scot-free. Michael Frisch loses the draft through the pit cycle. So does Octavio Rondoletto. Rondoletto is back there drafted with another lapped car. David L. Brown also lost the lead draft. So those names I mentioned are about 10, 13, and 17 seconds behind the race leaders, respectively. So they've got some work to do. And now Vroman trying to serpentine side to side as he ended up way too far in front of the field and somehow keeps that 19 car behind him.
Yeah, the whole pack died out because they separated. They weren't one by one by one by one in the top 6. They were almost too wide. You had Vroman blocking all over the place, and Malik trying to look for a place to get by as well. And that meant that the entirety of that rest of the pack was instantly able to make up that 2-second gap. And here we are now. Everybody back together. It almost looks like lap 1, Evan. Why did we even run those 56 laps? Because we're restarting the race now with the same old characters.
Something tells me we'll be saying the same thing at about lap 195. Right? It's a brand new race. Who cares what happened in the first 195? The only consequential thing that you can do in the first 495 miles of this race is wreck. It's the only thing consequential you can do. Now, unless you're out there to get a good points day for the team and really want to get your sponsor exposure and lead laps and get some NAS points, that's a valid opinion, I suppose. But again, the only thing that you can notably do is take yourself out of this race. We have seen so many drivers, again, just in the 57 laps that have been complete thus far, as the ones into the outside wall. Big late block from Bolin on Maines. Maines took it to the fence, and now it will be the 15 of Bolin dropping back. That's the old black Toyota on that third lane. He finds a spot in line.
Surprisingly, we're still green. We catch a replay of that, we're going to see that was a caution waiting to happen, and it's shocking that it wasn't. Vroman's still blocking up there on the top line. He is desperate to lead, which is interesting because a driver like him, who's been leading for a solid percentage of this race, I don't think he necessarily wants to continue to be in the lead if he has the chance. But there's what happened on the back straight, the block of the century, and if Garrett Maines stayed any more committed there on the outside, that would have been a caution. We are so lucky, the field is so lucky that Garrett was smart about that and backed out before that was very big.
Almost was a big one. We had quite a mess right here in turn number 3 in the opening laps of this race. Since then, they have tried to add a couple of cars to the record, but much to our entertainment, have been able to pick it up in the end. And almost back to the single file line that we had entering the pit cycle. The only 3 cars topside, that 3 of Roman, the 19 and 80, and the 1 of Garrett Maines. They're up on the outside, couple of cars towards the back. You can see sticking a nose out, thinking about it, trying to make some headway, but this lead pack, for how dense the 2x2 was when they first formed back up, is kind of sizzled out a little bit just based on how discombobulated things got.
You want to hear something that should be physically impossible, Evan? You see the number 29 in this lead pack, Dallas Pataska? You know what his safety rating still is? 4.95. This guy's been racing on super speedways all week, and he's got a safety rating of 4.95. That's worrying, because that means he's going to survive to the end of the race, and he's going to be there in 140 laps.
There's an onboard look top side of the racetrack. We talk about the couple of cars trying to make the outside line work. That's the 1 of Garrett Maines, looking up to the 19 of Naney and up to the 3 of Nicholas Vroman. That 3 had a chance. You see that opening between the 29 on the bottom and the blue 32 up the road? There was a chance there for that 3 of Vroman to jump ship, go to the bottom. Instead, he stays loyal, for the moment at least, and sticks to the outside, and these 3 cars will continue to do their best. Now, when the outside line has a significant numbers disadvantage compared to the cars on the bottom, you're going to have to get creative. It's going to involve a little bit more pushing, as well as you kind of see them drop down and going to get a little bit of the side draft as well. They're going to have to work a tad bit harder to make the same speed that the leaders are. Look out, another huge block. Smallwood tried to go around Tyler Gary. It was a late door close, and again, they almost wadded them all up.
But we talk about the Daytona rule of 3s. We've just used up 2 of them. We've used up 2 of our strikes. The third one is not going to work out so well. The first one was Garrett Maines. The second one was Smallwood and Gary there. And if there's one more instance like that, which we might just get here with Brad Newman in the middle, we've just gotten away with 3. You don't normally get away with that. That was Dallas Pataska, though, using that 4.95 safety rating to make sure that wasn't a caution.
They're trying their best, and they're still going at it. Huge crisscross inside and out. That was a Euro step in the tri-oval from the 15 car. Trying to work both lanes for Graham Bolin. He will settle down topside and now goes 3 wide. Of course, that's what I get for saying he settled down. Quick punch to the inside. Can't clear the 1. And it's just going to drag him and the 1 car back. It's hurting both him and Maines. Doesn't work. He gets a spot in line. Now the outside. And I don't know. I think I was enjoying those few laps where they were single file because they are right back at each other's throats.
I was enjoying the calm, too. We were living our nature documentary lives. We were interacting with the people in the chat. We were talking about game shows like we will at the retirement home in 70 years. And now they're raising our heart rates again, Evan. We're getting cardio now.
Should have been expected, but at least as we race into the night here, can't say that you're not going to be entertained throughout. These drivers doing their best to make it a good ticket. And again, happy that you're with us here with this special presentation of RaceSpotTV on the iRacing Esports Network. All of a sudden, outside, give it to them by 6 car lengths. Top is the place to be. As they head down the backstretch, you can see the significant numbers advantage for the outside. Wasn't just that long ago there were only 3 cars topside. Everybody else was single file. Now they kind of outweigh the inside line 2-1.
And look at who's down there leading the bottom. Zach Novak involved in the first caution. Got a couple of hits. but evidently was not very big damage. He is perfectly fine, and he's leading the bottom. But I say perfectly fine, I'm not sure if the pusher behind him necessarily agrees with that. Does Abraham Vela think Zach Novak is really in condition to lead? Judging by the fact that they've got about a 7-car advantage on the top right now, I'm not sure if that Novak number 2 is entirely up to speed and ready to lead a line just yet.
Well, that's the other aspect of this, right, is there are so many different splits going on, so many different iRacers, more than 1,600 people driving an iRacing Daytona 500s at this very moment. Now, granted, we dropped the green flag, almost an hour ago, so that number probably isn't 1,600 anymore. I'm sure some have been on the hook to this point, but
it's at least down to 1,590.
Yeah, I think that's a fair bet at minimum. But there's so many different races happening, and this is the open split. So there are fixed setup splits over the course of the week through the weekend in which all the cars have the same fixed setup. It takes a little bit more of that kind of extra work out of it. You got equal playing field. That Chevy's got the exact same car as that Ford does, as that Toyota. Here, though, the differences aren't necessarily limited to manufacturers, but it is the open setup split. So I referenced earlier some of the NASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series level talent drivers with Legacy or Dead Zone or some of these other big teams. All these cars are not created equal in this race tonight.
They are not, and the other big thing for Novak is he may have been able to get all of that damage repaired. He might have 0 seconds on that clock when he pulls into his pit stall, but he's still going to be feeling the effects of that. That is not going to be the same car he had at the start of the race, or even the car he was competing in the top level of competition here on eNASCAR. He's still going to be struggling for the rest of this day, and he's going to be hoping that by the end of the race, there's a few more cars in this pack who have similar levels of damage and are on struggle street to a similar level to him, because right now he is still feeling the effects, and he's going to find it very difficult to fight with perfectly pristine cars like the number 17 of Tyler Gary that does not have a single scratch on that porcelain white Camry.
I feel like that's a jinx.
Not yet, at least.
You better knock on some wood.
But when you come into
something.
a race with an all-white car, that's like driving an all-white car on the road. It can only get dirty.
Asking for it is what you're saying.
Exactly.
It
can only get dirty. I have
fair.
a white car, Evan, and I drove from Connecticut to Maryland in the summer, and it was like I drove through a bug sanctuary. It was half black.
I will say, though, as we get a good look at that Columbia 32 on the bottom, I would say, though, I think black cars show dirt more than white cars. That's my hot take.
Maybe if it's bird poop.
If you have, I have a black car. When the car is clean, like fresh out of the car wash, incredible. The second you drive half a block, filthy.
This is why we need more colorful cars on the road. There's too many whites, there's too many blacks, there's too many grays.
Yes.
I want my next road car to be painted in Brad Newman teal.
I was just going to say the same thing. That teal nose
we get that
see
going?
from anywhere.
Exactly. And like, you don't see brown cars anymore. You don't see highlighter green cars anymore. There's so many options. Stand out.
The Menards yellow, the GoDaddy green.
That's my favorite color. If I get a Menards yellow car, I'd put myself at high risk of carjacking, I'm sure, but that's a risk I'm willing to take.
I've heard of Arrest Me Red. I don't know what Menards yellow equates to, but
it's carjack me and skin me yellow.
Well, that's the old white 17 who's making noise topside. Tyler Gary right along that white safer barrier on the exit at turn 4, and the odd man out in this case. Can't see the number because of the sun shining on the roof of it, but that was the one of Garrett Maines who finds a home topside. He drops back to about being 7th in line or so. He will try to get his water wings back on, stops drowning, and continues on through. I'm sure he will be right back into the top 5 at a moment's notice, because these drivers are just rolling through the scoring pylon like they're riding the Ferris wheel at the Daytona 24. Up, down, and all the way around is a little bit of bump drafting topside. These drivers have been pretty calm on the radio. I keep referencing this open radio chatter. So many times that people get, kind of flustered and upset or nervous, and you can tell for how dicey this race has been over the course of the last 60 laps or so. They're pretty cordial and calm on the radio, just having some casual conversations while you're 2 and 3 wide at 202 miles an hour that time into turn 1.
Yeah, we're all friends here. There's no reason to get mad. That's what that hockey player said. It's just a game. Why you have to be med? That's what all these guys are agreeing with right now. They're having fun. It'll get a little bit more dicey, I think, in 130 laps, though. Evan, when we get to a green-white checker, potentially, you might get some animosity out there in the field. Brad Newman's gonna be on a tirade or against the rest of the field.
Also, if you're joining us via a multi-screen experience tonight, things have been a lot cleaner here than they have in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race. I don't know if anybody's joining us on a Daytona weekend doing a multi-screen experience, but I think they're about to break the Truck Series all-time single race caution record, is what Twitter is saying, or at least they're up there in the double digits. So they're getting close. We've only had just those early incidents so far in this one, as well, the 3 and the 19 going to get stuck topside. The outside can't really agree. That's good news for the cars you're on board with on the bottom, because they've got the best seat in the house down into 3.
You want to talk about overperforming? I don't mean to over-advertise Brad Newman here, because he's not paying for his coverage, but he's the number 37 car in a 37-car field. He would have been the first car out if this SOF was even 1 point higher, and yet he's at the lead of the field. Talk about overperforming there. He's gonna be making some virtual better some big money.
And to update from the real Daytona International Speedway, that is caution number 11 that's going on right now.
Right as you said that, I looked on Twitter on my other tab, and I was like, there we go again.
So it ties the track record. So they may be on the cusp of some overtime. I think they've got one more in them. We'll see. We still got a long way to go in this one. Certainly more than 11 yellows worth of laps to go. But I think, again, things have been slightly tamer, and unlike when you jinx somebody for a clean race car, I will knock on wood when I reference that, slightly tamer than what we saw towards the end of that first stint. We're about 22 laps removed from the green flag pit cycle that we saw as that 5 car, Joseph, quick move, bottom to top side to change lanes. Now, remember, we had those kind of varying pit strategies, right? That will rear its head again, because if you're Newman or Vela, Buttafuoco, Bakey, you pitted 20 laps ago. Well, you've got, 20 laps left of fuel. However, Brandon Bakey pitted 33 laps ago. He's got about 10 laps less than everybody else. He is going to need to find the other cars on the same strategy as him. The problem is he's vastly outperforming them in P4. The other cars who he pitted with, for Paytas, Payne, Seminario, they're down in 18th, 19th, 20th. If they pit separately, even if they pitted on the same lap, they would not exit pit road together. That's a little bit sketchy, and further reiterates the point you made earlier on strength in numbers. As they've got less cars, less room for error, it's going to be tough for those cars to execute a good pit stop together as a group because they're just all so spaced out.
It's going to be a tough choice for Brandon Bakey because he's in an incredible position right now. I mentioned how Brad Newman is the 37 cars in P1. Well, Brandon Bakey was only 1 position ahead of him in the seating of this split. He's also very much outperforming his expected position here, but he's also going to be in grave danger. You see him moving up to the top, though. He wants to lead this race, I think. This is not the sign of a driver who wants to move to the back and find some buddies to pit with. This is a driver who's trying to lead some laps and get out front and not think about pit strategy right now. Although he's going to get swallowed up and get sent to the back immediately, which might actually be a blessing for him. It all worked out in the end.
Yeah, I don't know if this was a mastermind move or what, but he got left in the middle, and it's going to drop him back maybe just far enough to find some friends in low fuel strategy places with the pit stops coming up. We'll see. I don't think he went far enough back, but closer. I don't know if it was by design, but again, that's going to be coming up soon. Anywhere in the next, say, 7 to 10 laps or so, we're going to be talking about green flag pit stops again. And as a driver, that's kind of how you need to break down these long races like this. Now, you mentioned off at the top, pretty snappy race. We're talking about 3 hours or so. Fingers crossed for that. Looking good so far, but some of these races can get a little bit high. I'm sure some of the endurance fans in the chat or watching the stream would kind of scoff at the idea that a 3-hour race is a long one, but again, it's the long end here on the oval side of things, and you use the pit stops just like you would in a road race. You use those fuel windows, your pit stops, to kind of break this race up into segments. You can't look at it as a 500-mile race. You got to look at it as a 100-mile or 120-mile fuel stint.
Exactly. Look at it like a race with 8 stages, potentially. Don't give them any ideas, but that's how you do have to think about it, because you're getting those little breaks every 40 laps, and you've got to build your strategy within those windows. There's an even shorter window coming up here though, because you've got a tandem of just 2 cars coming up here. It's not easy to pass a 1-car lap car, little bit of traffic down on the bottom. It's even harder to pass a tandem because they're going that little bit faster and they're longer. It's like trying to pass a limousine on the highway. You've got to get that much further past them. You got to get that much more momentum to go through. It's going to get very, very tough here for both of these lines coming up on this lap traffic right now.
And where do Romanides and Brown go? Right now they hold the bottom. So that's going to mean the top side stays there, but the middle lane for the lead cars has to go somewhere. They can't be 3 wide and overtake the leaders, or the lapped cars, you should say. And you can see some cars in the middle, but they're going to get to 2x2. That's well disciplined. Now the 37 and the 32 need to move up. That bottom lane is going to become the middle, but the trick is the 20 is not going to drop to the very last spot. They're going to, right now, instantly, they're gaining speed because they're starting to get a little bit of side draft off the cars in the middle. Not a ton, but a little bit of side draft. Oh, a bit of a hip check there for the 36 into the 27. But look at the 20, absorbed into the pack. If you wanted to be non-intrusive, you would go to the outside. It would allow the leaders to pass you faster. You would get past. But they choose the bottom because it's a little bit disruptive, right? You're yielding enough space for them to get around you, but you know that just based on the speed, you're going to get kind of picked up by that group, and those 2 lapped cars on an island no longer. They're now part of this larger pack of cars.
And David Brown in the 20, who was able to put himself in the middle of the field, he's now in lucky dog position. He's only 1 lap down, and he's about 17 seconds ahead of James Holzer on track. So if we do get a caution and he's not involved, he'll get waved around. He'll be back on the lead lap. Michael Romanides, who was the lucky dog a little bit earlier, you saw him be a little bit more courteous and fall all the way to the back of the train. That's because he's already 3 laps down. He needs multiple cautions and quite a bit of luck if he wants to get back on the lead lap of this race. So he's got nothing to gain for putting himself in the middle of the pack.
First group of cars that pitted under green going on 39, and this time by 40 laps since they last pitted. There are 120 laps to go in this iRacing Daytona 500. If you pit now, you would have very equal 40-lap stints to the end of the race. It would have to pit 3 additional times at about lap 80, at about 120, at about 160. Those cars who pitted later have slightly modified numbers. They can go to about 90, about 130, and therefore when they pit at about 170, they need to take a little bit less fuel. That's if they decide to use that less fuel stop for a little bit of a quicker time in and out on that last pit cycle of the afternoon. The sun breaking out of the clouds as well here virtually in Daytona. As things continue on, inside line still led by the ever-recognizable 37 of Brad Newman. Radio chatter starting to heat up. James Holzer says next time he's going to be coming to pit road, he is a lapped car, but it's worth noting to get into the mind, he pitted as one of those first cars the last time, so curious if that will correlate with the likes of Bakey and others.
Yeah, he might not be alone because as they crossed the line that time, the 2 Brandons, Schmidt and Bakey, they're on lap number 41 of their stints. They're together with Patrick Gitter in the middle of the field. Dylan Pettis is back there as well. Matt DiCiani. There are multiple drivers on the same fuel stint who are down there on the bottom. We may see a mass exodus of the track here and see about 5 to 7 cars come down pit lane this time. If they elect to come down this early, they may want to stay out that little bit longer, though. Go as long as humanly possible. Save that little bit more fuel, or maybe even hope that the caution comes out from this next bit of lap traffic getting past.
Lap traffic again, holding the bottom. Going to be a little bit trickier for the 13 Machina Heitman to get absorbed into the pack. The whole spiel I went on, because it does require a little bit of drafting help. He'll probably catch on to the tail end of this one, and he does. So, you know, this lead pack is not just lead lap cars. There are so many drivers in this mix, either at the tail end of the lead lap or just a lap or 2 down, just because every time the leaders come by, they kind of absorb anybody that they catch. Tyler Gary's got a good advantage up front, going to be 83 laps down this time by, just looking for takers, but I guess the benefit being for the cars who pitted a little bit earlier is they've been in the mid-pack this entire time, right? So they're certainly saving a ton of fuel. If you're up front, as McCandless, Frisch, and a couple of other drivers who were not in this lead pack do come down pit road and get their service completed, if you're in the middle of the pack, Joey, you're using a lot less fuel than the cars up front are because you can almost never really run full song. So not surprising that a car in the middle of the pack can do about 45 laps when the car leading the line could not.
Yeah, it's almost like traffic on the highway. When you're in the lead of a large group of cars, like when you get out of the office first at 4:30, you're running into nobody on the road. But when you get out of the office and you're driving home at 5:30, you're running into cars in front of you, you're lifting off, and there you see everybody from lap 42 or 42 laps ago. Their fuel's expended, they're coming down pit lane, and that's a very big group of cars. That's what you wanted. You wanted some buddies when you come down on an alternate strategy like that.
You see this lead pack a little bit smaller than it has been. That's because that big group darted off to pit road. Total takers, Bakey, DiCiani, Payne, Gitter, Pettis, Samario, Schmidt, and Robertson are the drivers down pit road. They were almost all of the cars left who had pitted on that first green flag cycle about 44 laps ago. Their key is going to be obviously getting out onto the racetrack in a large pack and trying to draft. Looks like a bit of too good of an exit there for Bakey, though. It's going to take some time. They will get linked up, but not the most coordinated exit. And now we'll be right back where we were, 40 laps ago, right? They're going to blend out onto the racetrack, and then this lead pack of cars who is yet to pit is going to try to catch them.
And it's going to be a big separation with this group as well, I think, in terms of pit stop laps, because Tyler Gary has been in the lead for a very long while now. He's going to have to pit before a lot of those drivers in the back of that lead pack, because as I mentioned, when you're at the back of a train, you're getting a car in the lead of the train that's going full song. Joseph now down to the bottom. He's expending all the fuel in the world, but go back to 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th in line. There's a checkup and a checkup and a checkup and a checkup to the point where if you're all the way at the back of the train, you're lifting out of the throttle and you're saving a ton of fuel to it.
And you just can't get away with that at the front of the field. Tyler Gary, just like the 5 at Joseph on the bottom, full song all the way through. Malik Ray going to pit on his own in the number 6 car. That is a solo pit stop. He had only been out there for 35 laps. So curious if they opted to maybe not take on full fuel and decided to maybe take a gallon or so out of it over the course of these next several stops consecutively, and if that meant that his total fuel number is going to be shorter. But again, pitting on your own is one of the last things you want to do at a plate track, so it'll be interesting to see where Malik blends back out into this as he exits down in turn number 1. Meanwhile, the leaders continue their fight inside and out. Now it's Nick Vroman with the advantage on the inside line. Their number coming up at about 10 laps.
You're going to see Malik down the bottom, I think, get passed by these guys very, very soon. He is now actually out of pit lane, or out of pit road, but coming onto the backstretch. There's the whole field coming up. There's the first little pack of about 7, and there's the entire rest of the field. I don't know if he's thinking about some Galaxy Brain strategy that we didn't think of, Evan, but I don't think this was the way to go.
Well, we'll see if Malik can prove us wrong. He's been known to make a strategy call once or twice in his day, and he'll also let his Twitch chat know and let that Open Driver channel know as well. Malik, one of the funnier characters around, and always a joy to watch on the service, but see if this one plays out for him nonetheless. Again, these leaders have got a ways to go still as Tyler Gary trying to close in on the pack of cars who's already pitted. Malik kind of in no man's land. He is getting the draft off of the tail end of the other group, but again, he's just not going to win out entirely in this. And there you go. You can see Malik on an island. He's closer to the pack in front of him, the cars who have already pitted, than he is the pack behind him, which are the active race leaders. So he'll tag in with this group. That's better than not catching the draft with them, so certainly could have been worse. He benefits from the fact that there's 2 large packs. If this race was broken up with a group of 5 here and a group of 6 there and so on and so forth, might have worked out a little bit worse for him.
Now I'm trying to think about Malik Island. What would that be like?
Oh, we don't have enough time
the island
to brainstorm that.
I can't think of any islands that end in Ray, so I can't go full pun here. I'm sorry for everybody disappointed at home, but Malik Ray Island. Think about that. If he ever makes the money to do that, I want to be the first invite.
If he's a fan of boats, we can give him Malik Del Rey, but I don't think that's an island. That's the closest I've got.
I'm here for it. I'll be there.
Well, if he wins it, we'll set it up, and we'll interview him down there on the bay, as Malik Ray is off strategy for the moment, but not out of this race yet, because there are still 110 to go, and here we go. Big swing for service this time. 4 cars down pit road. All of them aggressive on the brakes. It's Nicholas Vroman, Daniel Naney, Garrett Maines, and Joseph.
They're all in together. Looks like everybody got away with it, but didn't get to see the entirety of their expendables down there, but I think they're all good. And here we go with the bigger pack that's still out there. I don't know what's going to happen here. This is a lot more separated than the previous pit cycle was. You've got 4 different strategies now, maybe even 5 with Malik on the island of his own. It's impossible to tell who's really going to win out. You've got Buttafuoco, Zwack, and all of these guys. They've still got almost 7 to 8 more laps until they actually have to come down pit road. You see a few takers off to the left side. That's Brad Newman, but still 5 to 6 cars staying out. They can go as long as they want for maybe even 7 more laps.
And that tricky, kind of sneaky tricky part of all of this is that pit exit, to your point. I mean, it's tricky enough getting down to pit road speed here of 60 miles an hour, but it is that flat apron right there to the inside of the yellow, and then you can't blend out until you see that blue cone. That is tricky, and very easy for drivers to kind of overthink that aspect of things. But waiting on the top 10 to come down pit road before the pit cycle is complete. We haven't seen anybody of this group go more than 40 laps. They're at magic number 39 this time through. So will they stick to the trends? Will they come down pit road next time, or they've got a little bit more left in it? They're single file. That's what you want to do when things start to break up, because what gets lost at this point of the race is these lap times, right? It's easy to look at time on pit road, time in the box, but what gets lost is these laps. And if you can get single file work together for this 5-lap window, that's the difference between blending to back out after your pit service as the leaders of the top pack or at the tail end of it.
I think Buttafuoco might actually be an underdog here, Evan. We haven't talked much about him today, and it's kind of strange to call him an underdog as the 8 car coming into this race, but he's been quiet, he's been consistent, he hasn't been making the big moves, he's just been around. He's going to have 4 of his buddies leave him here, but he's still going to be leading this train with Matthew Zwack, who's been an excellent pusher. We've now got 6 different strategies, but I think he might be one of the ones to look out until the end of the race.
Interesting that they didn't come in as one group, right? They kind of split off again. The first green flag pit cycle of the night was kind of highlighted by the massive packs that came down pit road. This one is very much highlighted by the numerous smaller groups who have come in.
Yeah. There's only 6 cars left now that haven't pitted, so I feel like we're going to have to see that final pit stop here right now. There's not much longer you can wait. But coming out of turn 4 onto the tri-oval, they're still going to be able to stay out. So they've basically committed to this strategy now. Buttafuoco down to Crawford. They can likely go maybe even 2 or 3 laps longer. And I think they're probably going to have to do that now because they've committed to this. They can't just ditch this now. They've lost too much time. They need to be committed to going to lap 100 and just committing and going as long as possible and hoping that final stop is shorter, or maybe even hoping that a caution comes from this 3-wide action in the middle of the field behind them.
And you got to look at the lap times, right? So that top pack that you're looking at, all the cars who have already come down pit road and pitted. Nicholas Vroman, just the first driver to pick out, ran a 46.529 last time. For Buttafuoco and company, 45.592, 6:05. So they're pretty even on time, if not slightly faster, which is impressive, the fact that there's less of them. So again, this is the time where they can either be making up ground or losing time, and their discipline has been key. I think they're just far enough behind, right? This pack of cars is already pitted. You can see them going into 3. The other cars are about a half a straightaway behind them. I don't know if they're getting much of a draft off of them. If they are, though, that's only going to be further benefiting them.
And they're single file, which is exactly what they need to be doing right now. They cannot afford to race each other. They can't afford to jostle. And that's exactly what this bigger pack is doing. They were 3 wide a lap ago. They're 2 wide right now. And that's frankly just slower. It is not going to get you as much speed. You're not going to be able to build the momentum to the same extent. So if these 6 guys in the lead actually catch the tail end of the draft here, which I don't think is necessarily going to be possible unless there's a massive checkup. That would be a huge help to them. And that honestly might even put them in conversation for potentially leading this race once they do come in, which I think will be on this lap. It's lap 44 of the stint. I don't think you're going much further than that.
Yeah, 45 even for Hall and Morton. So these cars did not pit at the same time on the first green flag pit cycle, but they've kind of bonded together. The top 6 who have yet to come down pit road as the cars who have already pitted pass by. Here they come. 6 cars headed to pit road. 3 wide on the entry. A little bit of smoke, maybe close for Botafogo, but they are in for service. They will come down 4 tires and a full tank of fuel, and then they will need to blend out of pit road as a group and try to get up to speed before this big pack catches them.
I think Botafogo did get it slowed down, but we'll have to wait. Once he drops off the jacks here after taking 4 tires, has he got it slowed down? Yes, he has. And all 5 of these drivers, all 5 of these cars are going to be stuck together here. This is fantastic stuff. You see the 6th car as well. They're all joining in this pack together. They're going to have to resolve that pretty quickly. You don't want to be 3 wide on the apron, but this has been absolutely fantastic for Botafogo and company. They honestly might rejoin this race in the lead if they can get formed up.
Yeah, side by side, it wasn't great, but they did what they could. Hall stayed on the gas. Morton checked up a little bit to get in line, and Dalton Millman left a little bit of a gap. Milam, to get him to bump draft and get together. So, single file on the inside, but they've got to get up to speed. They're doing about 180 miles an hour. The cars behind them doing about 20 miles an hour more. They're going to hold the bottom. Remember that kind of force you to absorb us mentality that some of the lapped cars are taking? This group of 6 is not going to get out of the way. They're going to hold the inside, and when those faster cars catch them, going to make them go to the outside. And what they're trying to do is make it just close enough on fuel that by going to the outside, they would scrub some speed, and they would not be able to complete the pass. And it looks like they've done it.
They're fully up to speed now.
Yeah, they're still going to get caught, and this will become one large lead pack. But they will be the leaders of this pack when that moment happens, and that is mission accomplished for that 6-car group.
We found our winning strategy, at least in the short term, but don't let that distract you from the fact that when we cross the line this time, this is going to be the first time we're in the triple digits of laps. We will be to halfway, but that is only halfway. There is still 50% of this race to go, and everything that's changed up until now could change in the opposite direction the next time around. So hold on to this confidence right now. If you're in this pack of the lead 6, hold on to this strategy if it's going to continue to play well to the end of the race. But there's still a lot of racing to go, and you are not in a comfortable position. Only 1 second ahead of almost 20 cars behind you.
Yeah, but working so hard for just a little bit, and you are nowhere near the end quite yet. 30 cars still on the lead lap in this one. I may be most impressed by the fact that they're still holding that advantage, and it's really just because this other group can't get it together. I mean, they can't decide what they want to do with one another. It's allowing that lead group of 6 to be about 0.2 of a second faster every lap. I still don't think they're just going to be able to drive away. I think that strength in numbers will eventually just outmuscle the strategy, but it's the discipline for those lead 6. And we are 100 laps down and 100 laps to go, halfway through this 2024 iRacing Daytona 500. Daniel Botafogo has led 10 laps. He's your race leader. We've seen Nicholas Vroman lead 23. Tyler Gary, a race high 37 laps led. He's further back in the field as this lead pack of 6 on the pit strategy got their way to the front. And now that that second pack has largely single-filed out, they are no longer pulling away, and they're going to catch him, and we'll be right back to square one. One big old pack off of turn 4.
They were all listening to you, Evan. You told them to behave, and they were like, if the drill sergeant Evan says what to do, we're going to do what he says, and it paid off for him. Look at this. Look at the momentum Vroman's got. He caught to the back of the top 6 about a quarter of a lap ago, and he's already taken it to the lead. That is what behaving and getting in line can do, working with your fellow drivers instead of just working with yourself and going 2 by 2 by 2. When you unionize with your fellow drivers, when you work together, you can do big things, and you can make an absolute freight train up here on the top.
That was a 44.7 second lap time from Nicholas Vroman. It was his fastest lap of the race. and no surprise there. No draft in front. That was simply the coordinated push from behind that pushed Roman out, and he will lead his 24th lap of the afternoon on the outside of the racetrack. So it goes to show when you work together, not the worst idea I've seen. Some more lap traffic up the road. Again, that's going to be the constant song and dance. Octavio Rondaletto, James Holzer, they're going to get caught in a couple of laps' time, and those drivers will find themselves falling another lap down. They are both currently, or actually, Rondaletto's on the lead lap. Holzer's one lap down. That would be big because it would give Rondaletto the lucky dog position, and it would take it away from David Brown, who is in the lead pack. So there may be kind of an interlead pack lucky dog battle of lapped cars who are actually in here and mingling amongst the leaders. But Roman and company, once they got it together, they took off, and it's about a 60-40 split percentage-wise, a little bit more cars riding the outside line amongst this lead group.
I do wonder, though, we've gone so far now, 104 laps total, almost 100 laps green. When does that start getting a little bit more dicey? We've had those moments of 3 wide, we've had a couple of hip checks, we've had a couple of squirrely leaders, but we haven't really been close to a caution in about 100 laps. I don't know if that's going to last, though. I don't want to jinx it, Evan, but it comes to a point where you go this far green and drivers start to get a little bit crazy. They start to know that once you're past 50% in the race, you do have to start making moves if you've been holding back. And that's when things can happen, potentially. That's when things can go wrong.
It's also a little bit tricky to maintain the discipline, right? And I think there is again, some of the endurance racers may scoff at the concept, but 3 hours or so, if you go green, a lot's happening, right? Because proximity car to car so much closer on the oval side as a general rule than it is on the roadside. Certainly you don't have different classes of cars. You're not, preparing for cars that are significantly slower than you or faster than you. But in this race, you're never more than 2 feet away from the next car. So you'll notice they're still not really kumbaya, let's all work together and be friends. But it is certainly not the big sweeping blocks like we saw early. That's just mentally taxing. They need those 10 laps before the pit stops to kind of take a breath, reset, get the pit cycle out of the way, and they'll mix it up again. We're 3 wide. They'll do that, but you just can't stay at 110% for every single lap.
Oh, we almost just had some big trouble there. That was a pushed car getting pushed into a hole that didn't exist. And that's when you can see the big trouble coming. That's what happened today. If you had your double monitor set up like Evan mentioned on the truck race, that's what happened so frequently in that race. You had holes that didn't exist, drivers not willing to lift, and that combination means crash and means caution. So you need to be careful if you're doing something like that. And there it is. Joseph gets turned off a 4.
It happens just so quick, and some of the top cars from the night are involved. The yellow flag at lap number 106. And this is not great timing for fuel strategy in this race, because drivers were looking to get to about the lap 120 marker, and Joseph just took a huge hook after it was the 13 car pushing him, getting the shove from Derek Heitman, and we'll pull up the replay and show. I mean, it came out of nothing. I referenced earlier, you want to push down the straightaway, you want to lift into the corner, and then you want to line it up so you get right back to the bumper when you come off the corner. Well, there's a reason you don't want to be pushing in the corner. Not that they haven't been doing it tonight, but this is what happens when it goes wrong.
Yeah, you can push in the corner if you're straight on precisely through the entirety of the corner, but that's almost impossible to do. When you're going through a corner, the car in front is going to be moving around a little bit. You're going to be moving around a little bit, and you saw what turned Joseph there was the fact that the pusher was on his left rear, not straight on, and that turns the car. That's at an angle, that's putting the pressure on a corner of the car, and that just doesn't work. You can't do that. And it ends in disaster. We'll ride on board here with Joseph. You see Heitman on the left corner, turns him just enough, and Joseph's at such a high speed that he's out of control. He can correct all he wants, and there's going to be a wall right there.
So here we go. Pit road is open with a tricky 93 laps to go in this race. It looks like it's going to be wholesale service through the field. What this will do is it'll eliminate those varying pit strategies that we saw almost entirely, as everybody's coming down pit road for service this time through, but it's going to mean that everybody is not in the window, or it will be tough to be in the window to make it to the end of the race with one more stop. Drag race off of pit road. It's a close one. Give the advantage to the 8 car of Buttafuoco.
Newman coming off pit road in a decent position as well, P7. But this is going to equalize things now. With everybody coming down pit road this time, I'm thinking to the end of the race now. When we go green, it's going to be about 90 laps. I don't think we're going to go green all the way, but if we do, you're going to have to see some fuel saving here so drivers can make it to lap about 155 with 45 laps to go, and then to the end of the race. If you can't do that, you're going to have to take a splash and dash at some point. But I think every driver in the field is going to be relying on at least one caution to the end of this race and hoping that they don't actually have to save that much fuel to make it with one stop to the end.
Wouldn't be shocked if I see a couple of cars at the back end of the field top off at the one to go, just to get a little bit extra. We've seen some get to 44, so it's going to be tight. Here's the onboard with Zach Novak, third lane behind the wreck. Quick cut down in front of him was the 84 car, and it's a lot of smoke. Maybe a Band-Aid or two for the right front headlight decal, but other than that, could have been a lot worse.
It could have been far worse. It could have been the first caution he was involved with, but he didn't, or he managed to get away with not too much extra damage there. He's going to have some friends now with some light damage, though. So I mentioned how Novak was struggling to lead early on because he did still have some lingering damage that couldn't be repaired. He's now got some cars in the same situation as him. They've got some scrapes, they've got some dents, they've got some suspensions that might not be entirely pointed straight. And that's a good thing to have when not everybody in the field's at full fighting form. It's a lot easier to fight forward than if you're the only damaged car in a pack of about 37.
Lights out on top of the pace car this time by a couple of wave arounds. Going to go past the pace car. James Holzer will, I think, go back to being one lap down, and Octavio Rondoletto will stay on the lead lap because he was ahead of the race leaders, so he will get the chance to come back around. Here's another look from the accident. You're looking back to the cars in the middle. You'll see the twitch, and man, that thing just snapped topside so fast. Goes to show, I referenced earlier, you know, some drivers will want to hang to the back because they want to be so far behind the wreck they can avoid it. That was a case of maybe being the leader was actually safer because there's just less cars in front of you that can wreck if you're the leader, because there's none.
It's always good to be ahead of the trouble. It's good to be behind the trouble. It's good to be sometimes luckily in the middle of the trouble. All to say, there's no safe spaces. Although they're all safe spaces. It's impossible. It's a puzzle.
To be lucky. How about that?
Exactly. That works out.
If only there was a science to avoiding wrecks on a super speedway. If I had the formula, I'd have a lot of money.
The formula. If only. I could pay for that.
Listening to, I just love listening on the driver chatter. Every time somebody queues up, my brain kind of goes numb because I'm trying to process what they're saying. Brad Newman chatting with some drivers. I don't think anything too critical. Blake McCandless still in this one, trying to catch up to the tail end of the field. We started 37 cars strong. I mentioned that Dalton Collins had gone to the garage, and unfortunately Jonathan Delaney has joined him. So has Alex Link and Derek Heitman. It involved in one of the more recent incidents. That would leave only Michael Romanitis and James Holzer as cars who are in the race but not on the lead lap. Romanitis 4 laps down. Holzer only 1, so he'll be in the lucky dog spot. Joseph's night is done. He goes to the garage. So that gives us about 32 cars still on track. That's pretty good for 109 laps down and 91 laps to go. Green flag back in the air.
Very well behaved, just like the last restart 100 laps ago, but this time the bottom doing pretty well with Buttafuoco in the lead. I don't know if it's going to last for very long, though, Evan. We saw that top be so strong on the previous restart, and it looks like that momentum's building up again.
It just always seems to bounce back. The top side gets the jump, and then the bottom's able to wind it up right here is where they've been good so far tonight. And again, turn 3 like clockwork. And give kudos to Garrett Maines. We just talked about the risks of pushing in the corner. He did it, but it was enough to clear both him and the 8 car as they'll step up to the outside and take control as the race leaders.
And Garrett tried to go up there on his own, but Buttafuoco said, nope, you are not going up there on their own. I am clear of you, and I am coming up to block you as well. He's living up to that New Jersey license there, driving a little bit like a New Jersey driver on I-95. He will cut you off. He will go to the lead because he is the main character of the road, and he's going to keep leading this race.
Thought about it, goes right back to the outside as Buttafuoco kind of working to both lanes, but there wasn't a bottom lane to work there. 32 car, fifth in line, makes the move to the inside. That is Abraham Vela. Haven't talked a ton about that car tonight. Started way back in 35th spot, but a top 5 car and looking to get a crack at the race lead.
He's got some familiar names there. He's got Brad Newman. He's led a lot of laps in this race. He's got an unfamiliar name in the middle with John Hall. We haven't talked much about him, but he is in a clean car, a clean number 33. These could be a powerful group of 3. You see them pushing past Tyler Gary, who seems unwilling to really push Buttafuoco. That's going to be Vela with a little bit of a wiggle, getting to lead this race for the first time, and he's going up to the top.
Oh, big bobble there on the inside as John Hall got loosened up by Brad Newman. Newman goes to the outside, and Hall got so far out of shape, he's got to hit the eject seat, go to the apron to avoid crashing, and you can't run full speed down there, so he's going to have to tiptoe through the corner, and that car is damaged, and John Hall going to go from a top 5 spot to completely losing touch with the lead draft just like that.
Yeah, that's heartbreaking. Just as I mentioned him, being up front for the first time today, running solid, it ends very, very quickly. And I think he did have to bring it down. He didn't bring it down pit lane, or he's lucky in that aspect, but he's going to be hoping for a caution either way. 10 seconds behind the pack now. That is that's some terrible luck for him. But look at this jostling. There's a second lane forming. There's a first lane dying. There's some drivers looking for a new lane to be formed. This is the prototypical primordial soup where everybody's just trying to form their own civilizations here, form their own lines, and get some momentum back going here.
It's that weird in-between period where no one's ever really worked great together tonight for a long period of time, but the outside's only got a handful of cars. If anything, I'm more worried when there's a spread out pack like this than I am when they're on top of each other, because this means the crunch is coming. We're on the stretched out part of the accordion. They're about to compress on each other as the draft builds up, and that's when things get really nervous. Why not go 3 wide? That's the 2 car to the outside. Novak just going to do it to take one single spot away from Brandon Schmidt because he can.
Yep, he's had no fear so far today. He's been involved in 1 caution, mostly avoided the second caution. He wants to win this race. He's got nothing to lose. He might as well go for it. And he's doing it in one of the many, many blank black cars in this field, which I choose to believe isn't accidental. I choose to believe it's all a tribute to BJ McLeod on Thursday night.
Don't mind me just listening in again to more of the driver radio chatter, and the outside goes...
We need to get these live radios here. Producer Dustin Ellis, can we hook that up?
One day, when we can calculate how to do it and put a 5-second delay on it, if necessary, that is my dream.
Please.
One day we'll get there. This race is long enough. We might develop the technology before the time it gets to the end of it. But that top side's got... Was it 9 cars outside? No, it's 8, close enough. But 8 cars topside. Everybody else on the bottom, well, outside's holding their own. They're not dropping it back at all. I've always found Daytona to kind of be the opposite of the freeway, right? So freeway, right lane, slow lane, that's where you're supposed to camp out. And then it's the left lane where you go to pass people. At least that's what it should be. Not everybody gets the concept. Well, Daytona's kind of the opposite here, right? That top lane is typically been the passing lane. Now, more and more in recent years, we've seen drivers figure out, hey, don't just go to the top side pass and then drop right back to the inside. Stay up there. Historically, the bottom has been where you've rode around, and the top is where you've gone to make the moves. But drivers have gotten better as the draft as well has changed into this 7th generation of NASCAR Cup car, and the continuous updates and draft model changes and tweaks that iRacing does. They've done a better job, these drivers, of learning. Hey, when I clear somebody because the top's fast, I don't need to go right back to the bottom, but right on cue, 4 of them to the bottom. And I think that's just more so working lanes than feeling safe down there, but it's been interesting to watch that evolution from era to era of these Cup cars, and holy cow, a big bobble from Buttafuoco. It was Newman who gave him a shove, and he's quick to apologize. That was almost a nasty one.
Yeah, that was timed slightly wrong. Didn't quite make it to the straight part of the back straight. That was on the curve outside of turn 2. So maybe a little bit early from Newman, but lucky to get away with that one, and he's going to learn his lesson from that. He's going to stick to the straights, end through the tri-oval to give his pushes, and maybe focus on timing it a little bit better. But Buttafuoco is going to be taking that in his mind until the end of the race. If he has Newman behind him coming to the finish, he might think, is this going to be the safest position for me? And he thinks that right now. He says, I'm going up with the 28 instead. I want a different pusher after that scare.
Working both lanes. For now, the 8 cars hold strong topside. Newman leads the bottom, but he's going to get undercut. What a beautifully timed move by Dalton Milam and the 2 Zach Novak in step with each other. 28 goes for the undercut. The 2 pushes him through, and Buttafuoco tried to shut the door, but by the time he saw it coming, it was too late. That was nicely done. That is the exact kind of move that you want in your back pocket when we're talking about the white flag lap.
And look who's in second now. Zach Novak in the number 2 car. Talk about a comeback. He's moving forward, and he's almost all the way forward. But what can he do? Can he lead this race now? Is that damage fixed to the point where he can actually lead if he chooses to go with Brad Newman maybe and pass Milam? Or is he destined to be the pusher here? If you're a little bit damaged, if you're a little bit slower, you can still be an effective pusher because the car in front of you is pretty clean and as fast as it's ever going to be. You could still push him in the draft. But Novak can't be a pusher all race long. He wants to win himself, and he's got to figure out how to get ahead of somebody who's got enough momentum to be able to win this thing.
Well, this lead group doing a good job of pushing themselves out in front. It is a 5-car jailbreak, but much like trying to leave Alcatraz Island, it's all going to be for naught. They're going to be caught nonetheless, as those other cars will now draft back up to them. But it was a nice attempt by those top 5 to stay in line and get some breathing room for the moment. But that big, long, single-file accordion has caught back up to them. The only misfits topside going to be the 24 of Brandon Schmidt and the 27 car who's going to find that spot in line first. Bailing is Michael Romanidis from a lap down, and well, it's not a place you want to be in if you are noted lead lap car Brandon Schmidt. He finds an opening, thankfully, because otherwise that was going to be a long trip to the back of the line.
You see in P10, Dallas Pataska, he's actually made a little bit of a comeback. I think he was off strategy at one point, had to get 50 seconds of repairs under the previous caution. He's up there in the top 10, and directly behind him as well, you see that number 6 with the Gainbridge sponsorship, Malik Ray. Remember, he was off strategy. He almost got screwed by having to go off strategy. The cautions evened everything out. He's back in the fight as well. Just like everybody else on those 6 different strategies, now they're all on the same strategy to the end of this race.
I think we said something towards the tail end of the first half of this race about how almost like, nothing matters in this opening 40 and we just kind of reset and do it again. I think we're kind of at that point, right? All those varying strategies in the end did not serve as an opportunity to win this race. The only thing that happened out of all of those strategies was an opportunity to lose the race, to get off cycle, to lose touch with the pack, to lose a lap. That's the only thing that happened in the pit strategy, was an opportunity to put yourself behind. You can try to lead every single lap at Daytona. You could lead 199 of them. I do not care. The only one that matters, last lap of the race.
Yeah. And you can even lead 200 laps. You can lead 200 laps and still lose it.
Daytona's got a way of putting some overtime in there and can never count that out. Still only 1 car on the outside of the racetrack, although we mix it up at least. They're keeping us on our toes. This time the Lone Wolf topside looks like it's the 33 of John Hall. He's 3 laps down, so that's not going to be loss of position. He will simply cycle through behind these lead lappers, and they're almost, again, we talked about this fuel window. If the yellow had come out now, would have made things a whole lot easier, right? All right, let's come down, get our fuel under the yellow, go out 1 green flag pit stop to the end, and we're good. The way they pitted, they came down pit road about 16 laps ago, and they have 77 laps to go this time by. If they want to be able to make it on a 1-stop strategy, you're looking at needing to get 46.5 laps, so about 46 or 47, and that would get you right to the number, and that would also, Joey, require a ton of saving on the second stint. Drivers don't tend to be really good at fuel saving on the home run stint in these races. I wonder if we dare see drivers be a little bit more cautious this run. Will this single file run its course? Because everybody needs to save more than they have up until this point.
Well, I think you're going to see some drivers thinking a little bit like some gamblers right now, because they're gambling on a caution coming out. I think you're going to see drivers like you're seeing here in the top three. I think Milam, Novak, Newman, and a few others, they're pushing 100% right now. They're not thinking about fuel saving to the end of this race. They're hoping that a caution comes out that saves them, and they won't have to think about fuel saving at all. But you see a few others, I think those are both lap cars coming down pit road this time. They're going to take some fuel and try to make it to the end of the race themselves. But everybody else right now in this single file pack, nobody's saving enough fuel to go 46 laps. There's enough separation that everybody had to push. If you want to gamble a little bit, if you want to assume that a caution's going to come out, it could pay off for you, and you could make it to the end without having to think of strategy at all.
The two cars that are in are Rondeletto and Holzer. I mentioned them off of the last restart. They had stayed out to get a wave around, so they were still some 40 laps removed from their last actual trip down to the pit lane. So they are forced to pit. What they were banking on was to get a quick yellow. They would have loved the yellow 10 laps off of the restart because everybody else would have pitted and they would have been on cycle. On board with Blake McCandless. He was up front a little bit earlier on in this race, led 2 laps right now, P26 at the very end of this long single file train. He's 3 whole seconds off of the race leader. That's both pretty close for being in the 20s and also so far back. Look at that daunting run of race cars up the road that he's going to have to figure out a way to pass in the next 70 or so laps.
And how about a little bit of fan service from producer Dustin Allis? We had Danderson24 in the iRacing Twitch chat ask which McCandless is racing tonight. It could be Phillip, it could be Blake. There's your answer. It's Blake. How about that? That's the magic of having a producer like that.
It's good that we showed the car, because if we had dialed the unnamed McCandless up, I would not have been able to tell you which one it was by hearing them.
No, neither would I.
So the name tag is beneficial. I know Blake's brother was in Charlotte with us at the eNASCAR Championship last year at the Hall of Fame, and we tried to convince them to just toss his brother in for a segment on Countdown to Green to see if anybody picked up on it, because they sound so similar and they look pretty similar too. So maybe one day, if we get an April Fool's Coke Series race, we'll try to talk Blake into making that happen.
Maybe I could do my Blake McCandless impression.
Well, Blake had a good me impression back in the day on Twitch, so I think that's only fair that somebody does a Blake impression.
I mean, he could be in the booth right now doing an Evan Pasoko impression, and I wouldn't know.
God.
I would have no idea.
That's deep, and he's pretending to be me, his brother's pretending to be him.
Exactly. I'm doubting reality right now.
Well, this is a simulation. It's not a game.
Is this whole broadcast being generated by Sora, that OpenAI thing?
That's the new one. Listen, it's not a game, it's a simulation, so maybe it extends beyond the virtual walls of Daytona. Although that would cause an existential crisis for myself. So I'm not going to go too deep down the rabbit hole.
Derealization setting in already.
Yeah, it's a little bit dangerous. And
oh my God, it's real.
There it is.
The conspiracy's real.
Is that a Freudian slip?
That's a McCandlian slip.
Ooh, that was good.
There you go. I don't even know who I am anymore.
That's valid. I'm just listening to these drivers make dinner plans and
who's making dinner plans?
Vela was talking about something to do with eating. I don't know if he's talking about food or if he's just real gassed up to go past some people.
I don't know what time zone he's in, but
I think some are placing for everybody. Some are placing bets on when the yellow's going to come out. Again, that's what you do at this point in the race, and it's funny because you would think, all right, well, we're past halfway. Things should probably ramp up, but I always find this kind of 3/4 segment, right? So from like a lap 100 to 150 to kind of be the calmest, because you're so amped up. By the time you get into the lap 50 to 100 period, you're just getting through your first or your second cycle of green flag pit stops. This is kind of that whole everybody hurry up and wait moment of the race. And again, Malik Gray's trying to recruit people to come down pit road, but they're all saying that there's no groups anymore, right? They're all in agreement with what we had been saying, as they're going to work around some lap traffic here as Dylan Apitas holds to the outside of the racetrack and will yield to the leaders. First time we've seen somebody yield high. That's going to make it a lot easier for everybody. But they're all saying, like, we're all on the same strategy. We are all in the same boat. There is only a couple of cars towards the back, like Gary, Zwack, Smallwood, and Crawford, who pitted 1 lap different compared to everybody else. But again, everybody's in the same boat here. And that's the consensus, I think, for us and amongst the drivers.
Right now, this is just some of the most expensive high-speed rail you're going to find in Florida. 35 cars back, 200 miles per hour. There's not even much you can really say about it, because everybody, even with Malik's attempts at convincing people, I don't think there's going to be much change until that pit stop comes around, because there's just no reason to. You're not going to be able to move forward because nobody's going to come with you. You're not going to be able to pit because nobody's going to come with you. You just have to ride in line right now. Make sure you're still in contention, and make sure you're in contention after that pit stop comes and forces everybody to separate a little bit.
My favorite stat to throw out, and it's admittedly not as relevant in plate racing as it is other places, but I would like to look at how many cars started inside the top 10, and how many of them are running in the top 10, right? Of those, obviously, 10 cars started in the top 10, that goes without saying. But of the cars who started, where they were right now, in the top 10 currently, we only have 3 cars started there. It would be P3 runner Brad Newman, who started 8th, P7 runner Garrett Maines, who started 9th, and Daniel Naney, P9 runner, who started in 3rd. There are actually more cars in the top 10 right now that started outside of the top 33 than there are cars who started inside of the top 10. So that goes to show you, when we saw less than half of the field actually put down a time at qualifying, well, that's that exact reason why.
That's the magic of Daytona right now. This is going to get a little bit weird, though, because there's a big separation between P12 Matthew Morton and P13 Johan Seminario. It's about 1.2 seconds. These guys have to be careful, because if that gap gets above 1.5 seconds, it's going to be almost impossible to bring that gap down. But they have gotten lucky there. There was a checkup in that top 12 that's closed this gap down. Seminario is going to be able to latch onto the end of this train and bring everybody behind him in. But that was a scary moment for them. That could have been worse. If that gap was that little bit bigger, that could have been half the field losing the draft and being totally out of luck until the next caution came out.
And the single file train is back once more. That lead group of 3 who you hypothesized aren't really saving, or hoping, they're banking that there's going to be a yellow, so they're going to use the fuel to maintain the track position, continue to kind of flirt with pulling away. But again, it's just not going to happen with the way the draft works. And Buttafuoco just went up there to clean some dust off of the wall and pulled right back down in line, just doing something to keep himself entertained as he gets a shove now from Abraham Vela, who, again, we hadn't talked really at all about in the opening half, but David Robertson, both cars, again, the numbers in the field determined based on iRating. So we mentioned this is the top split. If you're unfamiliar with the process, of the 1,600 plus drivers who are racing, we will take, in this case, the top 37 based on iRating and put them in split 1, and then iRating 38 through whatever the next number is, split 2, and so on and so forth. So the number 1 car in this race, Garrett Maines, has the highest iRating, and the number 37 car of Newman has the lowest. It's not necessarily an indicator of talent, because Brad Newman's been up front in the conversation all night, but I think it is worth noting out that, Vela and Robertson both started in the 30s. Their car numbers are in the 30s, and they're running right there with the Novaks and the Newmans and the Mainses of the world. So it's impressive stuff, no matter how talented you are on the iRacing service, when you can go up there and go head-to-head with some of the drivers who are running in iRacing's World Championship Series.
And by the way, you weren't seeing things in the exit of turn 4 there. You just saw Garrett Maines trying to pull the highest speed game of chicken you've ever seen in your life. He pulled down below the double yellow line, made it look like he was going to pit, and then committed back up on top. He was trying to trick some people into coming down. It didn't work. Nobody followed him down there. But is he going to try and do the same thing again this time out? No, I think the rest of the field and himself have learned that trick didn't really work. But he is going to be moving up to the top. Now we're starting to see the single files over. Drivers want position. They know the pit stop's going to be coming in a couple laps time, and they need to be further ahead in the field if they want to keep moving forward.
28 laps since they last pitted. They need to hit the number 47. So they need to get at least another 19 more laps. That would put them to about lap number 154 or 155. That's the hypothetical number they need to hit if they're going to want to do this on a one-stop. Likely not possible, of course, but you're still going to want to push regardless, Joey, because you're not simply going to accept defeat and say, okay, it's not going to happen. As a big block to the outside there for Milam and Novak, it will allow the 8 car Buttafuoco to cross back down to the inside. Maines and the 27 car follow back through, and all of a sudden we're 3 wide again. But you're not going to accept defeat and say, all right, let's do a 2-stopper. I'm going to pit after 30 laps, after 60, and then make it to the end. You're still going to want to go as long as possible, so if you do need to make a second trip down to the pit lane, it is going to be for the lightest of splashes of fuels. So they're going to push no matter what, which will make it hard for us to be able to tell just how close they actually are on that fuel number.
Poor old Matthew Zwack in that purple car was looking to potentially go to the front. He was leading a train in the middle, and he just got totally ditched by 7 or 8 cars. Every time somebody got behind him, they said, no, Matthew, I refuse to push you. And eventually he slots back in line, but it's all the way down in P9. For all that shuffling we saw, for the potential second line that looked to be forming, it's now dead. There's no second line anymore. There's 3 cars up there, and the rest of everybody else is down in the bottom. And you've got Michael Romanidis, for good measure, who's 4 laps down. He honestly might be able to lead this train, and that would make Buttafuoco pretty happy, because he could save some fuel and still be in P1 if that can happen.
And we were, 3 wide, 3 laps ago, packed in, and it spreads back out. And again, that's why I'm more nervous when we're spread out like this, because it means that crunch is coming. It might not happen in 5 laps. I think that last kind of stint of single file was pretty long, but it will happen at some point. And those are the most dangerous times of the race, when you get that big head of steam and somebody decides they're going to go for it. 4 cars on the outside now as they get a little bit of reinforcements. It's Newman who leads it, Malik Ray in second, Michael Frisch in third, and then the 4 car in line who's kind of the tail end of this one. That's a lapped machine in James Holzer. He is actually 2 laps down in 29th spot. He's simply just trying to be a part of this to maintain that status. Again, he's not in the battle for the lucky dog spot. Unfortunate for him. What he would love is to be the leader of this group, so he actually would go from 2 laps down to 1. I don't know if he's going to hit that number, though.
Huge run on the top came there, though, but Malik Ray gets taken up to the top lane, and he gets absolutely ditched by Newman and Frisch and Buttafuoco. Frisch goes down to the bottom. I might be seeing things, though, Evan, but the front end of that car does not look as healthy as it once was. I think that might just be the way the paint scheme is, but it looks like he, no, it's okay. That's just how it's painted, but he scared me a little bit.
Well, you talk about some dirty cars, a little bit tough to tell on the front of the Gainbridge machine for Malik Ray, but I think for the most part it's all still there. And just kind of glanced up and saw the sun kind of beaming down on us from 1 and 2 and thought, we're kind of felt like we're getting a little bit late in the afternoon. In actuality, it's only closing in on 5 o'clock in sim time, so we've got plenty of time left. Let's take a look, though, at the replay at what happened here. See the field kind of checking up a little bit. Oh, yeah, there it is. And that was a big hit to the outside. That was all the way around in that accident, but somehow we get away with the yellow. He gets down to the apron after the spin. That was Matt DiCiani. So tough break there for him, and doubled up so by he's not even going to get a yellow to repair that car, so he's down under green flag service, and his night ends just like that. Nobody bats an eye up front.
That was a great surprise. That didn't bring out a yellow. He was both backwards and spinning and sliding 45 degrees across the track. Normally that does bring out a caution, but no luck for him. And also no luck for Tyler Gary, one of the strongest cars in this race. He's been up front all day. He was involved in that only 2-car collision somehow, and that's going to be the end of his chances for this win as well. So terrible luck for the number 17 after it was going so well. Look at this 2-car tandem at the lead of this pack. Those are not actually in competition for this win, Evan. Those are Romanidis and James Holzer, who are happy to lead right now because it gets them at least 1 lap closer to being back on the lead lap. And Newman and everybody behind is happy because they can save a little bit of fuel. They don't have to lead this race anymore.
Yeah, Romanidis going to go from 4 laps down to 3, because again, he's technically 1 less lap behind the leader because he's directly in front of that 37 machine. But I had mentioned it's really big for, big for Holzer, because if he can get in front and he's 1 lap down, and that's exactly what he's done so far. So Holzer doing exactly what I think he wanted to go for, and that is be the leader, which makes him simply just no longer 2 laps down. Still not a lucky dog position. That's still in possession of Octavio Rondoletto. He would have to go all the way around 2.5 miles and then catch back up to this lead pack to give Rondoletto a shot. And it ain't going to last too long for the 4 car because Newman and Romanidis are going to go topside to clear that 4 car. Interesting decision there. But the 37 follows suit. And listen, Brad Newman doesn't care who he's drafted with. As long as somebody's going somewhere, he'll use you.
Exactly. And for all of our friends at Coanda Esports, if you want to screenshot this feed right now, make sure the ticker's not in it, but you've got Michael Romanidis in the lead of the field at Daytona. There we go. Producer Dustin Ellis minimizes it just for your screenshot. Make sure you take this right now. He's even got the orange and blue and white on the car. Take your screenshot now. Let's move with this. Let's do a little bit of disinformation.
And I'm not even going to lie. I'll just give no context here. Romanidis leads the field off of turn 2. There you go. You got your soundbite. You're
Fantastic.
Good. Now we'll clarify. Leads the field as a lapped car, but just get your soundbite, get your screenshots in. Nothing like running up front at Daytona. That's kind of one of the moral victories I would take.
Yeah, I'll do anything. If anybody wants to offer me a misinformation deal on iRacing, I will make deliberately wrong calls to make a quick buck. That's my pitch right there.
Just start gaslighting mid-race just to get some sound bites in, clip them, send them on Cameo.
Exactly. Like, I'll say, anybody in the chat want to be in the lead of this race today?
Highest bidder. You get to lead a lap of the iRacing Daytona 500.
Lorenzo Bonder leads top split.
Money-making operation.
That would be... Give me on Fiverr.
Ah, there you go.
Cameo.
I've done Fiverr before. Do we have time for this story?
I think so. We're single file. We got plenty of time.
I have once voiced over somebody's bar mitzvah video from being on Fiverr. So that's about the most random Fiverr story I've got.
Do you still have the video?
I do not, I don't think. But it was really cool. I don't know if this is like patient client privilege confidentiality or whatnot, but the kid did like a whole video. It was like his morning routine, but it was set to be like a sports game. So it was called like a sports game, but it was like him waking up and like, would toss the change of clothes like into the basket, but it was like a fadeaway 3. Like it was pretty cool.
That sounds... We might need to recreate that somehow.
Yeah. So
if anybody watching has a kid who's about to have a bar mitzvah,
let me know. I've got prior experience. And this
he makes the 3 into the laundry basket.
Almost quote for quote. I wish I had it, but if I get stuck on any of those real endurance races, we're talking a 6-hour broadcast stint or whatever over the course of a long run, then all the Fiverr stories come out. I don't know if anything beats the bar mitzvah one, but yeah, maybe we would do live recordings of them to fill the time.
Oh, if we get a 3rd green-white checker tonight, we might need some of that to fill some more time.
We'll keep it in the back pocket if we need it pushing to NASCAR overtime a little bit later. We've already seen some overtime tonight in the NASCAR world. Of course, the trucks, I think they did beat that track record for cautions by 1 with a wreck on the last lap. A couple of trucks ended up upside down, and look at this, Vroman just blitzing the field on the back straightaway as that lead group with Newman and company kind of fell apart, and shades of the 2-car tandem, at least for a moment, with how fast they went flying through 3 and 4.
And now Newman and Maines say, we got to stop dawdling here. We can't be spending time behind Romanidis. We do actually need to get back on the pace here. And they're not going to let Vroman and the number 19 get too far away. They are going to be able to catch them pretty quickly. But there's another lap car coming up. There's going to be another moving chicane. It's going to be easy because it is just 1 car down there on the bottom. Shouldn't be too difficult for a single file train to get by. But that was a sign, Evan, that things are starting to get a little bit more intense. The pit stop's coming very soon on lap 40 of this stint right now. You're starting to see some jostling for position as drivers need to get further forward in the pack once they make their pit stop.
And remember, everybody pitted 40 laps ago. There are 52 laps to go this time by, but they're not going to make it those extra 6 laps to get halfway. 4 wide onto pit road. Newman leads them down and in, as it's Newman, Vroman, Maines, Naney, and Payne to pit road for service. This is an admission that they are not going to be able to make it on the one-stopper, so this will not be their final trip to pit road tonight.
I think you're probably going to see some people follow them in this lap on the back stretch on the top of your screen. That's basically the entirety of the rest of the field. You see some drivers moving up to the top line, though. They're looking again for track position before they come down pit lane. It's a dangerous game, though. If you get stuck on the top, you can't come down with cars underneath you. But we'll see how many drivers on the bottom elect to bring it down pit lane this time. They're going to have to hope to come down with some buddies and not come down alone. But nobody goes for it this time.
No takers. And again, now we'll see the challenge of having so few cars to pit. What can that Vroman and company pack do as only a group of 4? If this lead pack catches them, not really a good sign in terms of how things will play out for you when everything cycles through. Garrett Maines talking through a little bit of the bump drafting strategy with some of the good cars around him. They're kind of strategizing right now on, I'm going to push you, or let's stay in line, we're going to catch them, we're going to go high. So they're kind of planning what the moves are going to be. Again, single file, so bank's open if you want to come down. And here we go. Milam from the race lead. The 2 is Zach Novak in from second, but is it only those 2 cars?
Oh, and did Milam get it slowed down? He locked up the inside left. Or the,
and he missed the box,
and he missed the box as well. This is pain. And he didn't get up on the jacks quickly there. I think he may have gotten a penalty for speeding there. Locked up one of the tires, then locked up all 4 after he'd crossed the line already. That doesn't smell very good for him. Although so he is out of the box now. 15-second stop. I think he made it. I think he surprised me.
I was with you. I was convinced that he was too hot. Coming to the line, 66 miles an hour. There is a bit of a grace period. Again, I think he just got away with it. He slowed up to almost 10 below the limit. Milam's still going to lose time, but it's more so going to be the time lost from missing his box than it was anything else. And now another solo taker to pit road this time. Malik Ray, he does have some help. Liam Sheen is in. Brandon Schmidt is in. They're all pretty spaced out. And again, the very first green flag pit cycle in this race, Joey, we saw big packs come down. And then that second stint, it was groups of 8, groups of 7. Here it has been the most uncoordinated all night. And you would think as you get later, everybody kind of locks in those plans. But I've been surprised.
And the math doesn't really line up for this to continue, though, because you can't go that much further than this. We're on lap 43 of the stint for your leader, Frisch. We're on lap 44 of the stint for basically everybody else. I think you're going to see a lot of drivers coming down this time, but you're not. You're going to see Buttafuoco bringing it down this time alone, and everybody else continues to stay out. My question now is, who's going to be able to make it to that lap 155 marker? Because that's how far you need to go if you want to make it to the end of the race. If we go green, you need to go 2 more times around this place, and that's going to be very, very difficult if you've been in the lead at all.
Well, all of those lead cars who decided that they were going to come down pit road first, seemingly unable to make it to the end on 1 stop of fuel. These cars not out of the question. They pitted 45 laps ago. There will be 47 laps to go this time by. In theory, 1 shy of the halfway number they need to hit. I mentioned it a while ago, 154 to 155 or 156. That's kind of the ballpark you got to get into. Well, they're working lap 154 now. They have yet to pit. So there's a chance. You're telling me there's a chance for 1 through 11. Frisch says over the radio from the race lead, he is pitting this time. We'll see if everybody else follows him. Have they done enough to make it to the end of the race? David Robertson also echoes from P5 that he will be coming down pit road this time as well. Robertson in a tricky spot, Joey. He's got pit stall number 1, or I guess pit stall number 43, or however many there are. He's got the first one. So he's got to slow down at a quicker rate than everybody else.
It's going to be tough for him. It's going to be tough for everybody here. Is anybody going to be able to go to 45? Yes, actually, Vela is able to stay out, and everybody else basically comes down this time. Couple lockups for good measure, but everybody gets it down safely. Abraham Vela, 46 laps on this stint, and I think he was in the lead pack. He was pushing, so it's actually quite miraculous that he's been able to go this far, and I hope he can make it all the way around the track.
And his pit stop is showing as 1 lap prior to some of the other cars that he was running with. So this time by, it will be 48 completed laps. Now that is slightly deceptive because that includes laps under the yellow, right? So the first 2-3 laps of that stint, you're really only burning about half the fuel you would under green. But it is worth noting that he's made it longer than anybody else, and the 32 car is going to come down pit road this time. So for Vela, is this going to be a worthwhile gamble? Entry to pit road is clean, quick into the box. Has he lost enough time by deciding to get that extra 2.5 miles out of his current take of gas that it's going to prevent him from blending back into the draft? Or is that decision going to be what gives him enough fuel to go to the end and win the iRacing Daytona 500? He's got tires, long stop in the box to get it all the way packed with fuel, and he will now exit pit road as the leader. Vroman at speed, though, coming off of turn number 4, the leader of this single line of group of 4, trying to take over the top spot, pass him. He's just now exiting pit road, so they will drive past. These cars pitted 7 laps ago. They would need to go 52 to the end. I don't see these 4 being in that same conversation as Vela.
Yeah, Vela's now in danger, though, because he needs to find a pack to work with. He was lucky that he was able to find a few cars to get the draft from and save a little bit of fuel before he came into the pits on that in lap. But if he's on his own on track, if he loses this train behind him, he's not going to be able to make it to the end of this race. You cannot do 44 laps in single car running. He needs to latch onto the back of this train, stay at the back of it, lift off the throttle as much as humanly possible, and save as much fuel as he can. Because if he can do that, he's going to win this race. He's in the best position. If he can't save any fuel, he's not making it, and suddenly he's on the same strategy as everybody else, 8 seconds off the guys who are going to win the race.
And now we wait. There are some cars who still need to pit. James Holzer, Octavio Rondaletto, we referenced them a little bit earlier. They pitted off cycle with everybody else because they had stayed out on a previous pit cycle. They have been out there for 30-some-odd laps. They're going to need to make a pit stop to the end, but the question is the line in the sand, the top 4 cars who are 7.5 seconds ahead of all of this. This is everybody else who has a plausible opportunity of making it to the end of this race with the fuel that they have on board. I do not give that same plausibility to the cars inside of the top 4. So for Vroman, Maines, Newman, and Amy, there's no saving. Those 4 are going to push, keep their gap, try to build an advantage.
Is that Vela?
And
That's
hope that
Vela
they get a
pitting
yellow.
again.
Wow.
Was that an unsafe? I don't think it would be a penalty.
No,
If
he
it
wouldn't go
was
back
an
to the
unsafe
box.
pit entry, it would be a drive-through, and he's coming to the box. But no, I think
What
no.
is
If you
going
do,
on?
if you do get an unsafe pit entry, I believe you do have to serve a stop-and-go penalty. So I think that is what's undone Vela. He sped on pit entry.
If that's the case, it would be a colossal collapse, but I mean, Vela was well below the speed limit on pit entry. Might have cut it a
Must
little
have
bit
been
close
pit
on the
exit.
exit. He's still in the box, though. I think he's in there longer than any penalty time would be.
I think the penalty time is usually about 30, 35-ish seconds, but it's going 43 seconds. That does smell a penalty for me. If we can, I think we might need to look at a replay of him leaving pit lane, because it's very possible that he was too committed on exit and ended up lifting up onto the banking a little bit, going over the double yellow line, or maybe he hit the cone on pit exit.
Yeah, I'm scanning it. He looked clean through 1 and 2, didn't cheat the cone on the exit. But obviously something has happened for Vela, and he's not the only one on this strategy, but man, that is such a tough blow for somebody who had been under the radar all night to launch to a top spot, a chance to win this race, and for some sort of self-inflicted error, we assume, to cause the issue. There could always be fuel was unchecked, right? There's an infinite possibility of things that could have happened. You don't check the fuel, so it doesn't actually fuel up, but he went 2 laps, so I don't think it would be that. I mean, it's hard to tell without being able to play NASCAR on Fox, and we'll play the team radio and figure it out. But whatever the case was, and Vela's coming back down again, or he's just having some issues. So I don't know what's going on with Vela, but what a tough blow for what was looking to be a great storyline.
And now the focus is on Frisch and Morton and McCandless and Seminario and Bataska and Zwack, because all those guys need to save fuel to make it to the end of this race, and they can if they're able to save that amount of fuel. Frisch is not in a good position, though. He's leading the train. You're not saving fuel when you're in the lead of the train. You saw Matthew Zwack realize that. He moved to 5th in line, and he's saving fuel now because he knows he's not going to make it to the end going like these 4 in the lead are.
Yeah, they're all going to be fighting over who is not the leader of that draft pack. That's what that secondary group's going to do. This group here doesn't care. right? This is the group of cars who I think know they can't make it to the end. They're going to push. But this group, now the one that we're looking at from 5th on to back, are the ones that have the best chance to make it to the end. So Frisch can lead some laps and then maybe drop to the back and cycle back in. There's kind of a double-edged sword here, right? There's this group, which is the lead pack of cars who has a chance to make it to the end of the race. And then there's a secondary group of cars who has a chance to make it to the end of the race. That was the 2 wide that you saw behind them. They want to save fuel while also trying to fight out amongst this group of 6. I would much rather fight 5 other cars for the win than 15. So they need to try to save fuel while also not allowing that group behind them by about 3 seconds to catch them. It's a tall order, but no one's going to want to lead that group, to your point. That's for certain.
I did just think of a theory, by the way, for Vela. Maybe he didn't speed on entry. Maybe it wasn't an unsafe exit, but maybe he sped on pit lane after he was accelerating out of his box, went a little bit too fast, then slowed it down on exit. That's the only thing I can think of that we haven't already theorized that may have brought out a penalty for him.
Beautiful thing about the sim is there's so many different ways you could find yourself penalized, and it's the element that's often overthought. And Zawak talking right now, these cars are trying to work together, right? Again, it's for the greater good, but they're arguing like, hey, listen, we have to take turns leading or we're not all going to make it. They agree with kind of the point that I had just brought up, that you need to work with each other so that you can fight against each other. If you guys cooperate for 35 laps, you can get a 1 in 6 shot at winning this race. If you do not cooperate, this group is going to catch you, and then it's going to be a 1 in 20 chance to win the race. So there is some kind of stressed voices over the radio channel trying to get that lead group of cars who thinks they can make it coordinated and swapping out more consistently the leader of that group because they know this pack is catching them.
These guys right here say, don't count us out. We're riding on board with Schmidt here. And he's got some buddies. He's got Patrick Gitter behind him. He's got Zach Novak around him. He's got Milam around him. Those are all very, very fast cars, very, very experienced drivers. And they are aligned. You can't see the train behind Schmidt right now, but it is single file. They are working together. And Schmidt is able to push forward on, I believe that's McCandless ahead of him. It's a lapped car ahead of them too. And they've caught the draft. They are in the draft of Michael Frisch at the back of the train in front. This is gonna be a bigger pack now. This is growing.
And you can't put the genie back in the bottle. It's done. Once they catch that draft, you can't shake them again. That big opportunity to stay 4 seconds out in front has been erased. And look at this big head of steam to the outside of the racetrack for the 4 car. Making some headway and making some moves. Look at them go all the way to the front of this pack up on the outside. For James Holzer, he's the lap down, but again, means to an end. He's bringing the 12 car, a Daniel Smallwood with, which means that Brandon Schmidt's got the draft. Now the 18 does it as well, and I'm not going to say they fumbled the opportunity, but man, their life just got a whole lot more difficult by letting that group catch him. Now look at this big pack. It's going to be a lot harder to be coordinated and save fuel when you're too wide like this.
But now Schmidt says, why did I let Smallwood and Holzer get to the front here? Now Schmidt is leading that top line, which again is exactly where he doesn't want to be. He doesn't want to be leading at any point until the final lap. So he's got to find a way to get potentially down to the bottom, let somebody get in front of him so he can back off a little bit, save a little bit more fuel, because it is on a knife's edge right now. It's a 15-lap stint for Novak. It's a 14-lap stint for Schmidt. That's 1 lap longer. He has to go to the end of the race on fuel to finish this race.
Again, just to set the picture, the group in the big frame, top of your screen, is the battle for 5th on back. They are predicted to be able to make it to the end of the race on fuel, or at least be close. But they are not the current race leaders. They are on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, 1st through 4th. They will almost certainly need to come back down pit road. Holzer, who was off-cycle pits, that does not affect the pit strategy for the race win that we are discussing. The leaders were what, 4 seconds, 5 seconds ahead of the group of cars that are in the big picture after the pit cycle. They're now 15 ahead. Goes to show you, Joey, that when you're not saving fuel, how much quicker even 4 cars could be over this pack. They have checked way out. They're trying to pad that gap as much as possible.
My math was slightly wrong, by the way. Novak would actually have to go 1 lap longer than Schmidt because he's on a 16-lap stint. Schmidt came in 1 lap later than that. But all of those guys in that window of 15 to 16 laps in their stint so far, they're going to be in danger of making it to the end of the race because not even Abraham Vella was able to go 48 laps. Vella was able to go 47, not 48 though. So those guys are going to be in danger. The drivers in the best position are actually down in P12 and onward. Johan Seminario, Dallas Pataska, Matthew Zwack, Blaze Crawford. They've only been on their stints for 12 laps right now. Their runs to the end will be 44 or 45 laps. That is attainable, and that is very doable with them in this pack now. I think those are the guys we're going to have to look at to win this race, and the guys in the lead of this pack, they need a caution if they're going to hope to make it theoretically or in any way realistically to the end of this race.
Liam Sheen a little bit frustrated. He wants a push, stuck from a lap down. That's a helpless position to be in because if you're a lap down, you're infighting with the other cars on the same lap as you, all hoping that there's the yellow so that you could potentially get a lucky dog, but you can't be the yellow or it's not going to count.
Exactly right, and even if it did count, you'd still probably be too heavily damaged to really do anything with it. So that's the trade-off you have to make. Down to the bottom, though, that was aggressive, and that's what you have to do. When you see a hole at this point, you have to go for it because you don't know how often those are actually going to open for you. But look at this, single file, basically from 5th all the way back to the end of the lead lap, basically. Everybody is in line right now, just focusing on making it to the end of this race, making sure they have enough fuel, so if they do have to fight, maybe with 5 to go, they can actually afford to expend a little bit and have a little bit of a buffer to actually make it.
Single filed out we return to after the second group of making it on fuel hopefuls caught up. Flew to the front of the pack. It's Zach Novak who leads the way. How concerned will he be vocally about leading this pack? Novak has been out there, I know you mentioned it, longer than anybody else, having pitted 19 laps ago amongst this group. Gitter 17 ago, Malik Ray 18 ago, and then in the best picture is Seminario, Pataska. They've only pitted about 15 laps ago. Same with Zwack, Crawford, McCandless, some of the other names that we've referenced. So it is good to note, without spending every single waking lap telling you who is and who isn't, as Ron Deletto pits, he was one of the last cars. 46 lap run for him as he comes down pit road again. He was stuck off cycle from a while ago. Without, kind of using every lap to tell you who's where by 1 lap or 2 laps or 3 laps, it's just worth noting that not all fuel strategies in this pack are created equal.
They are not, and if we get a green-white checker potentially, if we get a late caution, there might be pit stops required. There might be extra fuel required to make it if there are extra laps added to the total, which you never know what could happen. I don't remember the statistics from last year, but things get crazy in the last laps of Daytona. You never know what could happen. You never know how long the race is actually going to be.
That's the other part, right? Is appreciate all of you joining us for the better part of the last, 2 hours and 2.5 hours or so to this point, but who knows what the last 30 laps of a Daytona race can look like. It can kind of be like the last 2 minutes of an NBA game, right? Might as well just block out 15 minutes of your night for that alone with all the timeouts. Well, same kind of concept here with plate racing. Start wadded up race cars, you start talking the O word over time, you never know what is still to come here in Daytona. But for a moment, kind of it's quiet, almost too quiet sense, as everybody's gears are turning. They're looking at the fuel numbers, talking with the crew chiefs, and if you've got a friend trying to find a spot in line to put you to be able to make it to the end of this race with the fuel you've got on board, it will be a tall order if anybody's able to get the job done. Normally these plate races aren't known for being strategy races, but we kind of knew right when that yellow came out with about 92 laps to go or so, it was going to be tricky, and it has completely changed the complexion of this race.
Very bright sun reflecting off the clouds in the background. You've actually got some dark clouds coming over the track as well. We don't normally talk about track temp as something that really matters at Daytona, but if we do get into a situation in the dying laps where you might have to think about, do you want to go for a 0 tire stop to get your track position? Do you go for a 2 tire stop? Do you take lefts or rights? That could be a conversation coming into the final couple of laps, as it is hotter than it really should be in February in Florida right now. Tires will be struggling a little bit at the end of such a long stint.
See one straggler at the tail end of this lead pack of cars. That was Dylan Pettis, who's 4 laps down, 28th position. Not a factor, but just saw him. Wanted you to know who he was. They're now 24 seconds off of the leaders. I don't think it's going to get to the point, Joey, where Nick, Garrett, Brad, and Daniel up front can simply pit and then get back out there, and they've built such an advantage that they can possibly defend the lead still, right? Because pit lane time is 33 seconds, but it's more than that. Because not only do you lose time entering pit road, but it's really the process of getting back up to speed that is the most challenging. So I don't think they're actually going to get it, but they're certainly putting forth the best effort to.
I'm just feeling the tension right now because I don't know when things are going to start to get crazy. It's so calm right now, Evan. It's distractingly calm. It's almost boringly calm, but we know it's not going to be that way for that long. In 20 laps time, we're going to be wishing for these calm moments, I think. We're going to be wishing we had nothing to talk about because that's when drivers start to get a little bit less smart, we could say. With less than 20 miles to go, you start to make decisions that might win you the race. They also might end your race at the same time. So it's coming.
Again, I keep looking side to side, waiting for the moment where a Daytona race breaks out. 175 laps complete, 25 laps to go at the Virtual World Center of Racing. If you've just joined us, this race has had a little bit of all of it. The big packs, the crazy blocks, the big moves, and also, well, the pit strategy, the calculated moves, the fuel saving. It's been a little bit of everything over the course of the last 2.5 hours, and I'm happy that you're joining us with this special presentation of Race Spot on the iRacing Esports Network, looking to crown an iRacing special events winner. Zach Novak in P5, the driver we are focused on because he is in theory battling for the net lead of this race. Although leading the pack, not good for Novak, and the fact that he is pitted about 4 laps sooner than some of the other cars in his pack, I don't know if I can even count Novak in the same strategy as some of the other cars, or if he might as well be Nicholas Vroman. I just don't know. I wish we had the fuel numbers.
Exactly. I wish we had some telemetry there.
We need an insider.
We do. We need a whistleblower, but look at this. You said you wanted a Daytona race to break out, Evan. Here we go. We got 2 lanes now, and look at Vela. Vela's 2 laps down now. He's not even fighting for the win anymore. He's just holding on to hope that he can get back onto the lead lap, and he's making aggressive moves.
And he made the move not on his own, but because he saw a run coming from the 7 car of Blake McCandless. Would you think, Joey Tevin, that Blake McCandless would not be making an aggressive move to create a lane and lead a line if he didn't feel good about his fuel number?
I don't think he would be. I think he knows he has a little bit of a buffer. He's been riding in line, but look at this jostling. I wouldn't be surprised if 3 wide ends up breaking out at some point, because there's some drivers who know they're good on fuel. There's some drivers who know they can move forward. There's some that aren't quite ready yet, and they might end up getting slotted in the middle.
And that lead pack of 4 would love if this secondary pack starts fighting, goes 2 or 3 wide, because their strategy still hinges on another yellow flag happening to bring everybody else back down pit road because they will also need fuel service before this race is done. Again, your main pack that we've been watching, well, they're in turn number 2, coming down the back straightaway. Those leaders passing the start-finish line. They're about 29 seconds ahead of this pack, which we assume will cycle through to the lead. Again, doing their best. Do I think they're going to get to the point where they could pit and stay in front? I still don't think it's going to get to that margin, but they're doing everything they can. Every time we've checked in with that lead group in the bottom right corner of your screen, they're not fighting each other. They're not side by side. They're in line and working together. Same can't be said for this group, as the 32 car will go to the lead of the group and get Vela not for position.
And now that Vela is basically out of contention, he can basically just be a friend to the rest of the field. He can try and get some benefit out of this race and maybe make a new friend, maybe help somebody make it to the end on fuel. because that's basically all he's useful for now. That's all that Holzer is going to be useful for as well. He's 2 laps down. I just don't think you're going to get enough cautions until the end of the race to get enough lucky dogs to make them both back on the lead lap.
Single filed again just as quickly as they started to dice it up and go too wide. It goes back to the single file train. Now 20 laps to go at Daytona International Speedway. Nick Vroman still your leader. This part of the race is going to lock up at the most laps led for the driver of the 3 car. He's led 55 laps on the night. Nobody can catch him at that number, so Nicholas Vroman, talk about somebody who's had success in this iRacing Daytona 500 before, recently. Well, that's a good notch under the belt, is most laps led. Don't know what it'll translate to in a finish heat position, but we've known the 3 car's been there tonight. He's been in the conversation all night.
And I'm starting to think now, with probably about 10 laps until the top 4 finally come down pit road, how much can they extend this gap by? If they can get it up to about 40 seconds, they're not going to be able to come out in the lead, but they may, if they're lucky, be able to slot into this pack potentially and be in contention to the end of the race while everybody else is saving fuel. They'll be able to push. So this big margin, it could actually play a role, but they need to get moving. They need to hope that these guys run side by side again and slow each other down and open that gap up even more.
Drop it back on the apron. Not a factor to the leaders. Daniel Smallwood, who simply gets out of the way and allows the leaders to stay on the bottom of the racetrack. Again, single file, P5 through 17. Some combination of hopefuls trying to make it to the end of the race. It's another look at your leaders in the bottom right. That's off of the back of race leader Nicholas Vroman, pushed by Garrett Maines, Brad Newman, and Daniel Naney, who we do not think are going to be able to make it to the end of the race. They pitted 35 laps ago. They would have to hit a spectacular number of 52, and they have not been saving anything. It's just not going to happen. They could pit at any point, but they will likely run it all the way to the end in hopes of catching that yellow that they're hoping they will see.
Just don't know if it's going to come. That could be the yellow right there. Look at that shove. That was insane.
You want the yellow, but you cannot be the yellow. That defeats the purpose.
That was like a 40-mile-per-hour speed difference there, and somehow it worked out. I don't even think that's a yellow worry. That was just a front-end damage worry. That was such a hard hit.
Well, a little bit of a dicey moment there. There's a 5th car kind of hanging out with those race leaders. It's David L. Brown, lapped car, that makes it a 5-car draft. Brandon Schmidt, a lapped car, might make it a 6-car draft. If they get more numbers, it might help them go a little bit faster. But again, I don't think there's any raw speed that's going to allow them to be able to get a free pit stop out of this, right? Oftentimes, if you're in a NASCAR world and you're intermediate racing or short track racing, you'll see sometimes drivers go for a 2-stop strategy versus a 3, right? 1 versus 2 is often tricky to pull off the difference on, but 2-stopper versus a 3, oftentimes the pit stops are a lot quicker than they are at a big racetrack like this. The draft isn't as important. The cars who come down pit road twice, for example, say, are going to save the tires and run longer. The cars who pit 3 times can drive more aggressively each time. They tend to make up the time for the extra pit stop. You just can't really do that on a super speedway like this.
Sun's starting to set. We're starting to see some oranges. It's getting late. It feels like it's getting late in the booth here, Evan. It's almost midnight on the east coast of the U.S. I'm ready. I'm ready for this finish. 15 laps to go now.
Last time I called one of these iRacing Daytona 500s last year, I was still a West Coaster. So late in the race was 8 o'clock, right? Feels different as you approach the strike of midnight, and this one might end before we get there, but it'll be close, depending on how this one shakes out. Now coming to 14 laps to go for the race leaders. Their pit number likely somewhere in the next 5 laps, I would think.
And I'm trying not to jinx it, but we've gone 185 laps, and we've had 2 cautions. That's a pretty good record. Yeah, what was the number from the truck race earlier tonight?
12?
11? 12?
12 in a race that was half the race distance, we should note.
And a smaller field. They've only got 36 trucks in the truck
and all
field.
36 of them can't even get up to full speed. So yeah, pretty good job by
Pretty good
these
stuff.
top split iRacers tonight. Appreciate them putting on a show, and again, appreciate all of you tuning in with us as we are closing in on 10 laps to go in this iRacing Daytona 500. Evan Pasoko, Joey Tebbett in the booth with you. Our producer downstairs, Dustin Allis, with this special presentation of RaceSpotTV on the iRacing Esports Network. Roman continues to lead. Again, the story, the cars fifth on back. And they're all varying. You know, some drivers have been out there for 36 laps, but that late move, 5-10 laps ago by McCandless, set them up pretty, because McCandless is the lowest number of laps run. 32 laps ago, now 33 as they cross the stripe, is when he pitted. It's when Zawak pitted and Crawford. That's 4 laps sooner, or later, I should say, than Novak, Millman, Morton. So those cars, that's tough. Seminario only pitted 33 laps ago. And the benefit for McCandless here is he's not the lead car. That's the key, right? Everybody was arguing, oh, we need to exchange who's leading our line. They've got a ton of support here with Vila, with Holzer, with Rondeletto. McCandless, the black number 7, is the lead car of these cars, but he is only number 4 in line. He could not be saving fuel if those 3-lapped cars were not there. So this is a perfect situation for McCandless, because he gets to be ahead of everybody in his pack by position, but he doesn't have to lead the line and burn all of his fuel.
You're exactly right. And speaking of burning fuel, I think if you're in the top 4, yep, there we go. Just as I say it, they've not been able to huff the copium for much longer. They have to come down pit road. No more fuel left in those tanks. They better hope a caution comes out right now, or else they are not going to be in contention for the rest of tonight.
And it's only going to be a splash. David Brown was the one who nearly missed the pit road entry there. Looks like going to go left side tires as well. They figure they probably need enough fuel that it's going to put 2 tires on it anyways. They spend about 8 seconds in the box. I think that's going to be on the long end. And as they exit pit road, here they come. Blake McCandless and company through the tri-oval and headed off to turn number 1. They are going to pass those cars on the bottom before they get to the exit of turn number 2, and race leader no more. For the drivers who had to try to catch a yellow, needed a hope and a prayer, they opted not to save when almost everybody else did. And to the race lead goes Zach Novak now, who jumps to the outside line, pushed by the 28 and company. McCandless left watching from the inside line. And now the battle is on, coming to 11 laps to go this time, 10 to go this time.
This is really good, though, for those 4 drivers that just came down pit road, because as the lead pack fights, as they jostle, as they maybe even go 3 wide, that will be slowing them down. And look at those 4 in formation, lockstep. I think 6 seconds might be a little bit too big of a gap to make up in 10 laps, but they're certainly going to be in a better position to at least try and bring it down. They're still hoping for that caution, though. If it comes, they're back in. I don't know if it's going to come, though.
Big key about Daytona is all of that strategy gone. We've been riding around talking to fuel numbers for a lot. This is it. Battle for the win. You got to get all the way to the white flag for this one to be official. If you wreck it, you're going to invite that many more cars into the conversation. The tricky thing is, though, this lead pack only has 9 lead lap cars in it, but there's more than 9 cars total in this pack, and that's what makes it tricky. Malik Ray trying to coach everybody. Get low, get low. The 14 car in front of him, Rondeletto, drops down, so does Vela. Not catching the memo there was the 27 on the outside, as Michael's going to drop to the rear.
Well, Malik and Novak and Milam are not in a good position right now. They, most likely, assuming there isn't an absolute superhuman act of fuel saving, they're not going to be able to make it to the end of the race without a yellow. You just can't go 50 laps on a tank of fuel.
That point,
and there
Malik
we go.
Ray
There's some
said,
takers.
Malik Ray just said, I can't make it to the end on fuel, and there's takers. So these are the cars on the far end of the strategy. I mentioned Novak. Milam, those cars pitted earlier than anybody else. They pitted 42 laps ago. They cannot make it. Malik Ray, who's leading this race, just said, I cannot make it. He pitted 41 laps ago. Those are different stories. compared to Seminario, McCandless, and Frisch, who pitted 38 laps ago. That 3 to 4 lap difference looks like it'll be the game changer.
But who of these guys is going to be able to make it to the end of the race? Seminario isn't actually going to be in the lead when Malik brings it down pit road. He's actually going to have those 2 lapped cars in front of him of Rondeletto and Vela. I think we're going to see Malik take a hard left here. No, Malik stays out. He's going one more time around, but he is going to have to pit. He wasn't lying on the radio. I don't think he was playing mind games. He can't just break physics and go that far, but he is able to go 1 lap longer and hope for a yellow for that little bit longer.
And he said, I'm trying to pit this time by, so we'll see if Malik does bow out. That would, I think, him, Patrick Gitter, Buttafuoco, they pitted only 1 lap after Malik did. They'd probably be in the danger zone as well. But then once Malik comes in, I think it's a wide open battle from that point on for McCandless, Seminario, and company, who are all on the same strategy. They're going to go to the outside and make this pass. It's a battle for the race lead because the 6 of Malik Ray is your leader on the bottom. But after 43 laps that'll be completed this time by on fuel, he is done, and he bows out to pit road. A little bit of smoke there on the entry. Malik Ray is in, so is Romanitis, and so is Sheen. Now, here we go. Battling for the win at Daytona. These cars think they can make it on fuel. The top 6 of McCandless, Seminario, Frisch, Morton, Zawak, and Crawford have done all the saving they can. All that's left is to fight for the win against each other.
I still think it might be a little bit early to lead, though. You might still need to save a little bit of fuel if you're going to make it to the end here. So they're still going to have to use these lap cars to their advantage. McCandless is going to be able to push to the front, but he still needs to use Vela and Rondeletto for that matter, and Holzer up there on the top line. It's basically going to be a game of who out of these 6 drivers can use the lap cars to their advantage to make up the most ground on the bottom, but not take the lead. Is it going to be 3rd on the bottom that wins this race, or 2nd on the top?
Might be the weirdest photo finish you'll ever see, because the winner might be, to your point, 3rd, 4th in line. Can they all make it? Can any of them make it?
But look who's coming in the
go.
background. Garrett Maines is only 2 seconds behind Blaze Crawford. Give it 1 more lap, and these 4 might be in draft range.
That's why you got to push. These drivers were the ones who were not able to make it on saving. They had to make a 2nd trip down pit road. But remember, they pulled a 30-second gap ahead of these cars when they pitted. Now, they were not able to defend the lead, but they're working together. If there is any saving going on in this lead pack, Maines and company are going to catch them. Last lap for McCandless, 46.114. It was a 45.787 for Maines. They might just get there in time at 4 laps to go.
They are going to make it. Maines, Newman, Naney, and Vroman, they're going to make it, but the question is, what can they do when they get there? There is going to be a wall of cars. There's going to be 2 lanes there. Are they going to be forced to make a 3rd lane? And when they do that, can they actually use the momentum to their advantage? Things are starting to get very checky up here in this lead pack, though. You can't count out the possibility of there being a wrong block or an aggressive move that leads to some big checkups and some big trouble up here that may lead to a green, white, checkered finish as you see a block to the top for Vela.
Big block to the top side there. Right now, leading that lead pack. Couple of cars not on the lead lap. They're all chasing the 32 of Vela, not a lead lap car. Seminario, though, 2nd in line. He is, as he watches on from the number 1 spot on track. 2 in line, though, and now more lap traffic up the road. Going to make things even harder to follow. It is the red, white, and blue 35, a Seminario who's leading this race. Then behind him, the 14 car in line is not for position. That's Rondeletto. It is the black number 7 of McCandless, who's actually in 2nd spot. So they've got a lapped car right now separating 1st from 2nd. And now that other draft of 4 doesn't look like they're going to make up the time. 2 laps to go at Daytona. They need to get to the white flag. Look out. Contact with the 8 car. 3 wide in turn 1.
Buttafuoco does get back up on track, so no yellow's going to come out for that. That was an excellent save, but this is not good for Maines and Newman and Naney and Vroman. I thought they were on pace to be able to catch this pack, and they stalled out. They had a little bit of lap traffic, while the front 6 were actually able to catch some lap traffic and build momentum. We've only got about a quarter of a mile to go before we take that white flag, and the next flag will end it.
And at least for a moment, they have shook off the lapped cars. It is all leaders fighting right now, looking for the white flag. If they get there, the Daytona 500 is official. It's going to finish in regulation. 1 lap to go for Jonathan Seminario. Pushed by McCandless, looks high. Big block, back down to the inside. The 7 gets under him, and the 35 car is going to drop back.
But does everybody have the fuel to make it to the end? We're on lap 46 of the stint for all these guys. Could it come down to sputtering across the line? Look at Frisch in second. Zwack in third has been in the bylines for the whole time. Could he potentially pull off the underdog move to the end? Half a lap to go.
Wrecking down the back straightaway. 6th on back involved. No caution. We stay green. Final time in 3 and 4, but the lap traffic's in the way. Seminario can't get by the 21. Where does McCandless go? He gets down to the inside. Frisch underneath. 3 wide to the stripe. Who gets the win? It's Blake McCandless by 1/1000th of a second, winning the iRacing Daytona 500.
He had the fuel. He had enough fuel to fight for it. He knew what he was doing. And what a finish across the line. Blaze Crawford looked for a hole, got it down to 1/1000th of a second. But McCandless was in control. Call him the fuel master. Call him the restrictor plate master there at the end. That's fantastic.
It was the big run for the 35 as Seminario, but the 21 went up, tried to take that draft away, shut the door, and I thought it was going to be a 2-car battle. Frisch looked high, Frisch looked low, and then a massive head of steam for Blaze Crawford, pushed by lapped car, the number 14 machine, came flying up on the double yellow line. They were 3 wide at the stripe, and in the closest finish you can possibly get, it was only 1/1000th of a second. Watch Crawford on the bottom, on the double yellow, goes to the apron. McCandless is high, and if that start-finish line is 10 feet closer to turn number 1, we're talking about a different story. Instead, McCandless wins the top split of the 500 and is out of fuel in turn 4.
He's not going to get any real donuts for us. He simply doesn't have the fuel to do that, but maybe he can do some Brad Keselowski red flag donuts where he just drives in a circle at a slow speed. I could go for that.
He might just be able to coast and park it on the front straightaway. What an end to 500 miles in Daytona. Let's take a look at your RaceSpotTV full race results tonight. Again, the final margin of victory is 1/1000th of a second. McCandless over Crawford, Blake over Blaze. They were 3 wide, though. Let's not forget Michael Frisch, who had the challenge to the bottom of the racetrack. He comes home 3rd. Even Matthew Zwack tried to make a 4th lane. What an end amongst those drivers. Matthew Morton comes home in the number 5 spot. Jonathan Seminario with the big run could not find an opening, settles for P6. Garrett Maines will come home 7th. That other group of cars, they pitted a second time, came up about 2.7 seconds shy. They could not catch him in time. Newman 8th, Naney 9th, and Nick Vroman rounds out the top 10.
Malik Ray down in 11th at the end of it all. Went off strategy a couple times, didn't pay off for him. Dalton Milam and Zach Novak as well didn't have the fuel to make it to the end. They end up the last 2 drivers on the lead lap. And then a whole host of drivers ran into all sorts of problems. Rondoletto and Buttafuoco up and down. Pataska up and down. Patrick couldn't get her done. David Robertson, last driver, 1 lap down. And Brandon Schmidt, 19th. Abraham Vela, that's the big heartbreak. Maybe could have been the easy winner of this race, but speeding penalty on pit road ends up dropping him down to 20th at the end of it all.
It's a tough one to swallow. 21st position, Daniel Smallwood. Again, all these cars several laps down. It was Sheen, Holzer, Painted, Brown through the top 25. And then it's Brandon Bakey, Michael Romanitis, Matt DeConnie, Dylan Paytas, and Tyler Gary, your top 30.
And the used car lot, drivers and cars with heavy, heavy damage. John Hall ran into some trouble. Graham Bolin, unfortunately, was the pins today. Joseph turned at high speed, one of the first cautions in this race. Heitman, Link, Delaney, and Collins, they're going to be looking forward to 2025, I think, to get their Daytona 500 luck back.
Maybe even give it another crack over the weekend, but top split and here, this is the moment to get the job done. And with that, the clock strikes midnight. Thank you for joining us into the evening. What a finish. Again, you can see they weren't even settled at 3 wide. That was a whack, trying to go 4 wide, but what a photo finish for Blake McCandless. Joey, seems like he's either out of fuel and can't get to the radio booth to talk with us, so if he's afraid to chat, I'll make sure to bring that up in a couple of Tuesdays' time, but what a win for him. And this race had so much, right? Of course, 500 miles gives you quite a beautiful canvas to paint whatever you want on it, and it feels like a broken record. We say it all the time, but the 500 comes through. It had everything, the fuel strategy, the drama, the aggressive racing. At times we thought we were going to get a 30-car pileup in the opening 20 laps. We get through some of that. Second half of the race completely different, and they saved literally just enough fuel, not a lap to spare, to give us an incredible finish.
You're exactly right, and I did see that at Mr. F4 Speed himself was in the iRacing Twitch chat, so there's no excuses. Come join us in the RaceSpot team speak. But you're exactly right, Evan, that Daytona is a place where anything can happen. You can paint your own story. Dare I say, today, it was a blank McCanvas.
Ooh, beautiful. And he painted the picture all the way to Daytona Victory Lane. Now, the Daytona part of this iRacing special events calendar will start to wind down. Of course, if you enjoyed tuning in with us, or maybe turned on the broadcast, if your split of the 500 did not go according to plan, the good news is there are plenty of opportunities to still compete in the iRacing Daytona 500, both on the fixed and the open side of things throughout the rest of the weekend. And oh, by the way, I think we've got our race winner on the radio. So let's dial up the driver of the number 7 machine, because Blake McCandless is a race winner in the iRacing Daytona 500. Blake, congratulations.
Hey,
We got you.
All right, man. I can't believe that, dude. That was crazy. That whole race, we were caught in a really bad spot there early on, where we just kind of missed it on a fuel or on a pit cycle, trying to get an extra lap, and I don't know. We were in a really tough spot there on that last run, that we were kind of trying to gauge exactly what all the Ryco cars were doing and what pace they were at, and we knew that they couldn't make it to the end, and we were just trying all we could to figure out a way to do it. And honestly, I have to give a huge shout out to Octavio Rondoletto, who I had a great battle with in the 87s this season, and Abraham, because they basically provided us enough draft as lap cars to where we were kind of content to push them. And they basically gave us, the fuel or the draft that we needed to make sure that we could get there to the end on fuel. But, oh, man, this is nice. Everybody, North Force Racing, man, we just we worked so well together, and especially after what happened a couple days ago, we were a couple hundred feet away from winning one the other night, so it's really really cool to win this one for sure.
I will officially give you permission to hold this one over my head on Tuesday nights going forward. I think that's only fair.
You did say that you're going to win all of them, right? And I may not have won all of them, but I at least won one of them.
I hope this clip makes it into Countdown to Green at least, or something. But
let's hope.
You gave a shout out to him, Blake, before we let you get out of here. Anybody else you want to say hi to?
Yeah, thanks everybody for watching. I know appreciate iRacing for carrying this stream. Everybody at RaceSpot for kind of carrying this top split. It's kind of cool to get an extra spotlight here on this Daytona 500. But once again, want to thank them all: Blaze, Michael, P. Frisch, Matthews Whack, all these guys that were up front, Buttafuoco, everybody on North Force Racing that put in the time here for this race and have been really great to me. Over the last several years or so. I feel like somewhat of an elder statesman at NFR, being there for such a long time, and provided me a lot of help in Rotopro last night. Got a P6 finish to start that campaign off. So really special time, and it's cool. It's cool to win these major wins. It's one thing to go out and be able to have fun and on the service, but it's really special to win these marquee events because they don't come around very often. Everybody, does everything they can to try to win them. So really special, and thanks everybody for tuning in. Thank you guys for pulling me in here to talk about it.
Well, I appreciate you saving your best for the right split and doing it here on Friday night, Blake. Again, congrats on it, and I'll catch you in a couple of Tuesdays.
All right, Evan. Sounds good. Thank you, Dustin, Joey, everybody.
It's your race winner tonight at the virtual Daytona International Speedway. Blake McCandless is an iRacing Daytona 500 winner, and appreciate him jumping in and giving us an opportunity to chat with him post-race in this one. So as I was getting ready to say, this is a fun time of the year, Joe. I think I brought it up right at the top side. Daytona kicks everything off, and it's not just the 500. It's the Roar. It's the 24, and it's the 500. And we're officially back. Racing season in full swing, but there is still many more events to come coming up next on the iRacing special events calendar.
Yeah, I'm so excited for basically every single one of those events, from the new ones, like the Indy 6 Hour coming on board, the BRSCC Festival. That's not an entirely new event, but I'm looking forward to that later in November. The full-length NASCAR iRacing Series races, looking forward to them. And, of course, the Martinsville MX 500. That is going to be so much fun. I hope I'll get to be involved in that somehow. Maybe I'll have to get out and drive in that and get some carnage myself.
I've done the Moon Car 24 in the MX-5s at Martinsville, so 500 should be a breeze. And if you thought this one was tough, Coke 600, another battle as well. When we talked about how close that photo finish was, let's talk to the driver who finished 1/1000th of a second behind Blake McCandless, and that's Blaze Crawford, who comes home second in tonight's race. Joey, you're with him.
Indeed, I am. Gonna get Blaze Crawford in here. Blaze, how far forward were you leaning in your chair when you were coming to the line there to try and get that extra 1,000th?
Oh my gosh, too much, man. I honestly, I didn't think I had a shot at it on the white there, and being behind a ton of lap bars, and seas kind of parted down the back, and big shout out to Octavia with the hugest push I've probably ever received in my life all the way to the line. It wasn't quite enough, but I was just excited, to have a chance.
I do want to give you a theory, though. When we get to 2025, I think you're going to go to, the local whatever courthouse, and you're going to change one letter in your name. You're going to be Blake Crawford next year, and I think that could win you the race.
I think I'll stick with my name. Blake's awesome, a great teammate for sure. But hopefully, maybe I'll run Sunday night, maybe get me one. But just happy that NFR could go 1 through 4. That was incredible, man.
Well, congratulations on an excellent run tonight. We'll see if we can get it done on Sunday, and hopefully we see you in another special event before too long.
Oh, 100%. We'll definitely be running some huge stuff soon. Got to give a big shout out to Max Brady on the Super Saiyan, though. Dude was making it happen for us.
Fantastic. Blaze Crawford coming home in second, but the closest possible second it could be, Evan. It literally doesn't get closer than that.
I suppose you could tie, and I feel like I've seen one, but yeah, you literally can't get closer than 1/1000th of a second. That's as many decimal points as the service will give you, and they used every single bit of it over the course of this finish. Well, thank you for joining us over the course of the last 3 hours or so. Joey, of course, we've previewed the upcoming special events calendar, and looking forward to doing maybe another one of these with you down the road. It's been a fun time. Appreciate everybody joining us, and looking forward to a long special events calendar that's still to come.
Yeah, I'll be around. We'll all be around. Whether it's racing, whether it's broadcasting, we're looking forward to a very, very fun year of iRacing action.
And we hope that wherever that is next, you join us then as well. But until next time, that is it for us here tonight from iRacing's virtual Daytona International Speedway. On behalf of our entire team at RaceSpotTV and for your broadcast crew tonight, for our producer downstairs, Dustin Allis, for Joey Tebbett and myself, Evan Pasoko, I want to thank you for tuning in and congratulate Blake McCandless, who is an iRacing Daytona 500 champion. We'll be back next time. Thank you for joining us for this special presentation of RaceSpot TV on the iRacing Esports Network. Good night.